We are at the main headquarters of the Shenju group. At this moment, someone questions if they are really being fired. The young man says he never touched the money and that this is an injustice. He shouts that he has dedicated his entire life to this company. He even mentions that he recently presented a project and was promised a raise. The boss, on the other hand, says that he himself signed his termination and there is no going back. Then the young man recalls that he did indeed sign something. At that moment, he realized that the boss had set him up. But since he has no proof, the boss just tells him to stop talking nonsense. The young man insists that the boss set him up and tries to complain. This irritates the boss, who raises his fist, emanating a strange energy. He punches the protagonist, saying he is not to blame for this happening. The protagonist ends up being thrown against the wall by the punch. The boss stares at him, saying that this power is something only the wealthy are qualified to learn. The young man gets up, impressing his boss. He rises with an aura similar to the boss's power while trying to stare him down. The young man says that one day he will be above everyone in the city of Chaoyang and eventually the world. He finishes by saying that when that happens, he will buy the company just to fire his former boss. The elevator arrives on that floor. Out of it steps a woman who addresses the protagonist, saying he won't have to wait that long. A group of security guards organizes to receive her as she exits the elevator. The woman continues, saying he can fire his former boss right now. Her name is Shenmo, the eldest daughter of the Shen family. The protagonist is astonished as she is not only the daughter of the richest man in the district, but also his ex-girlfriend. The boss tries to steer the conversation towards himself, forcing her to ignore the protagonist. But Shenmo gets annoyed by his approach and says she just fired him and tells him to get out of her sight. The boss is left bewildered as he watches her walk towards the young man he fired. She says he messed with the future son-in-law of the Shen family. Shenmo adds that he is her future husband while pressing him against the wall. Shenmo tells the protagonist, Lin Chu, that their separation was devastating for her and that she is willing to marry him at any moment. Lin Chu asks if she really likes him that much. Shenmo says it's more than that. She wants his entire body for herself. At this point, we cut to the couple's wedding night. Lin Chu is still trying to understand what happened and accept his current situation. He still doesn't understand why she wanted to marry him so badly after 3 years apart. But before he can think of anything, Shenmo appears in the room in her wedding dress. Lin Chu looks at Shenmo and recognizes that even after all this time, she is still beautiful. The protagonist makes a speech saying he will always help her and stand by her side. Shenmo asks him to close his eyes and says she has a surprise for him. Lin Chu believes he's about to receive a true love's kiss. But at that moment, Shenmo gives a sadistic smile. She tells him to take the money and leave while throwing the money in his face. Lin Chu is confused, asking about being a couple. Shenmo says it was all an act and that she would never let him touch her, but she would give him a salary of 100,000 yuan as compensation. The protagonist says he doesn't want her money and asks if she wasn't trying to reconcile with him. At this moment, she points her finger at him, and an energy discharge hits him. Shenmo gets irritated with him and tells him not to be so stupid. She adds that the thing she hates most is a man who cheats, and that's why she wouldn't forgive him. Lin Chu still doesn't understand anything and asks what she's talking about. The young man is now going home, thinking that it all seemed too easy. He keeps wondering what that was all about and why she called him a scoundrel. When he arrives at his apartment, Lin Chu starts to feel something strange. Upon opening the door, he finds a girl with white hair sitting on the couch. The girl looks at him wearing a nightgown and calls him her love, saying she finally found him. The protagonist looks at her seriously and asks who she is and how she got in. The girl says she is his wife from a past life. She continues, saying they will pick up where they left off as she begins to remove her nightgown. Lin Chu looks at her worriedly and asks what she intends to do. She approaches him and the protagonist just imagines she must be crazy. The girl says that if it weren't their wedding night, what else would they be doing in the room? The protagonist imagines the situation is getting out of control and decides to leave. As he approaches the door, the girl teleports close to him and prevents him from leaving. The girl says that in their past life, they always practiced dual cultivation and that she is going to show him. Lin Chu tries to understand this dual cultivation story, but at that moment, the girl kisses him. Lin Chu's body starts to fill with energy, causing him to glow brightly. He notices something entering his body through that kiss. Eventually, he feels his soul being removed from his body. He watches his body being kissed while realizing his soul is no longer there. Gradually, he starts to ascend towards the heavens as a soul, observing many souls around him. Suddenly, he feels his soul cracking and imagines it will explode. As his soul explodes, he feels he is carrying memories of various people, from doctors to magicians. He mentions that the memories of each one represent a unique system of knowledge. Gradually, he accumulates these memories within himself, reaching 100, then 200, 500, and keeps increasing while the girl watches him lying on the ground. The numbers continue to increase until reaching a target of 9,999 people's memories. The protagonist acknowledges that he has so many people's memories that he knows everything about what exists between heaven and earth. However, a month later, we are at his funeral. During his funeral, a purple lightning bolt appears near the coffin. This lightning bolt strikes his coffin, and gradually the protagonist begins to rise. He stands up from his coffin practically intact, saying that he is not dead yet. Everyone stares in surprise, thinking the boy has turned into a zombie. But the man tells his maid not to say nonsense. The man is Shenmo's father and says he knew he would wake up. Lin Shu realizes he can't let them know what happened and says he needs to sleep. The man turns to his maid and orders her to take him to his room. He looks at the boy, imagining that this might be the legendary true resurrection. Shenmo looks at her father, thinking that her marriage was nothing but business. The protagonist prepares the table for dinner. He recalls the memories of all the people he possesses and feels his worldview has changed. He realizes he can see the information behind every item or person just by looking. He analyzes the values and importance of the items in that room. The maid appears at the door as someone orders her to serve him. While serving the table, the maid says the food was made for him and tells him to eat quickly. Lin Shu simply accepts and starts devouring the food eagerly. The maid observes the future master, thinking that her lady has terrible taste in men. The boy looks at her and notices that she really doesn't like him and is dissatisfied with her lady. He takes the opportunity to start a conversation, saying he doesn't know why she wanted to marry him. The maid is impressed with him knowing exactly what she was thinking. The father-in-law arrives and orders his maid to go serve the uncle as well. The maid obeys the request while the father-in-law introduces the son-in-law to the uncle. The maid fills the wine glass, asking him to slow down, but the boy remembers he hasn't eaten for a month. Lin Shu decides to provoke and asks if she can feed him directly. Although irritated, the maid accepts the request with a smile. The uncle slowly approaches from behind the son-in-law. When he touches him, the uncle feels an intense aura and is impressed by him. The boy turns to the uncle seriously and asks if something is wrong, but he says it was nothing. The uncle goes to the father-in-law and asks if there was any problem on the wedding day. The father-in-law responds that he was in a coma for a month. Lin Shu wonders what the two are talking about. He uses his power with the memories of a speaker to try to understand the conversation. The uncle mentions that the son-in-law has infinite energy and that someone put a lot of energy into him, which destroyed his aptitude for the Huyan Dan power. The father-in-law asks how much this can influence their plan. The uncle mentions that he had quite a bit of aptitude, but at the moment he is not qualified to practice even the basics. Lin Shu understands what Shenmo meant when she said she wanted his body. The father-in-law changes his attitude, complaining that he was just eating as if it was nothing. He uses a move that overturns the table and throws the son-in-law away. The boy doesn't understand what just happened. The father-in-law complains to him, but the protagonist just observes him. The young man grabs his father-in-law's wrists and looks at him seriously. He says that the father-in-law forced Shenmo to lie to him for the sake of his Huyan Dan body. The father-in-law realizes that he knows about the potential and asks why he became useless. The young man says he doesn't know what happened and suggests it might be because he's no longer a virgin. The father-in-law says it has nothing to do with that and mentions they saw Shenmo abandon him. He adds that he will not accept a useless person in his house. Lin Shu is surrounded by the family's security guards. He says he can leave on his own. The maid observes him, thinking that no one would miss him. Lin Shu asks where Shenmo is. He uses his hypnosis power to control the maid and make her call for the lady. He turns back to the father-in-law and asks if he only made Shenmo marry him for his hidden power. The father-in-law admits that there was no other reason for it, as he was useless. He asks the father-in-law if the Huyan Dan body is more important than his daughter's happiness. The father-in-law says yes, and without power, there's no way to protect everything he has. He explains that he was looking for ways to strengthen his cultivation and met the protagonist. The father-in-law adds that Lin Shu is useless for cultivation, but if used for dual cultivation, they could reach the Golden Core realm. The father-in-law says that if Shenmo hadn't given up, he would have made her practice dual cultivation on their wedding night. Lin Shu doesn't understand what this dual cultivation is. He imagines it might have something to do with the wedding night and believes he lost something. The father-in-law says that since he is useless, he will be sent to Africa so as not to cause more trouble. The young man says he is Shenmo's husband and tells him to consider her feelings before doing that. The father-in-law says that making her find another love wouldn't be difficult. Before being taken away, he says he has one more question. Lin Shu asks if it was the father-in-law who told Shenmo that he had cheated on her. But the father-in-law says he heard her saying that he was fooling around with several young girls. The young man doesn't understand why he doesn't remember this and imagines he was set up. He understands that he will need to fight if he wants to get out of this. The young man concentrates his strength to release the memories of the #1 boxer. But since his body is still weak, it doesn't do much. Shenmo appears and tells them to stop. The young man gets excited to see the lady coming to help him. He says he knew she wouldn't give up on him like that, but she tells him to leave. The father-in-law gets excited and orders his henchmen to take him away. But at that moment, she stands in front of him, saying that he is still her husband. The father-in-law tries to calm Shenmo, saying he will find someone better. Shenmo throws his entire plan in his face while showing her irritation with her father. She adds that she will stay with him since he's no different from a dog. Shenmo says that men are sometimes worse than dogs because dogs don't lie. The father-in-law just accepts and lets it go. In Shenmo's private area, the two observe each other while she drinks tea. She says that the protagonist made the maid call her to provoke her father and stay. She adds that he is a clever scoundrel. Lin Shu says he just wanted to know the limits of their marriage. Shenmo approaches him, exuding a lot of energy, which worries him. She corners him against the wall and tells him not to play dumb because she knows he has always been smart. The young man tells her not to come closer, but she leans against the wall. Shenmo asks him what happened after she kicked him out on their honeymoon. She tells him to say what happened and says that if he lies, she will castrate him. Lin Shu says he will tell the truth and realizes he can't escape this. He knows he can't talk about the memories he acquired, let alone how he acquired them. He starts to recount what happened with the white-haired woman and how she injected her aura into him. Shenmo says it's not hard to believe he had a former lover. The young man tries to explain that he has no idea who she was or why she did that. The young man asks why she insists on calling him a scoundrel. Shenmo says it was 3 years ago. She saw him with 4 beautiful women in a room at the Longhao Hotel. She asks if, when she was away, he was doing group activities or trying to learn a new language with their mouths. Lin Shu asks what she is talking about as he has never stayed at that hotel. The lady says she saw it with her own eyes. She opens the door and the pink-haired maid appears with a huge pile of clothes. The maid explains that the lady said he would be responsible for the housework, and if he didn't want to, he could leave. Lin Shu accepts the job. He believes that with all the memories he has, the work would be easy. But he quickly realizes that it is still hard work. He hears a strange noise and discovers another pile of clothes coming for him to wash. The maid literally dumps a truckload of clothes. She mentions that since he washes quickly, she will leave the rest to him. In the kitchen, he starts cutting vegetables for dinner, but the maid says they are too small and tells him to do it again. The protagonist complies while starting to get worried about these tasks. He imagines that someday he will get back at the maid. As he carries another basket of clothes, he wonders how this family has so many dirty clothes. Passing by a door, he hears someone talking about a casino in Las Vegas that had collected 10 million in counterfeit notes. His father-in-law was complaining to his daughter because the casino manager had been chosen by her. The pink-haired maid mentions that someone was trying to sabotage her, but the lady just accepts the complaint and says she will handle it. Moreover, she will deal with the people trying to deceive her family. The father-in-law mocks her, saying even the police were offering a reward to solve this mystery. Lin Shu hears this story and recalls the memories of a forgery expert. He gets excited and decides he must investigate this counterfeit money issue. In the Shenzhen warehouse, the protagonist thinks he can take advantage of the Shen family for now. He starts researching counterfeit money on the internet while intending to learn to control the memories. He researches until he reaches the dark web. The young man finds a promotion for a counterfeit note machine. He is very pleased to have finally found it. He decides to go out and get some things. The protagonist realizes he would be recognized if he went out to do business like this. He evokes the memory of a makeup artist to disguise himself. He manages to make a simple disguise with a coat and glasses. The disguised protagonist goes to examine the counterfeit machine, and the responsible person points out where it is. He examines the machine and notices it is genuine. The bald thug says they agreed on 5 million. Our young man says he only has a $100 bill. The thug gets irritated and asks what he intended to do if he didn't bring the money. The protagonist says he made that $100 bill himself. The thug doesn't believe anyone could make such a high-quality bill. The young man says the notes they produce couldn't be distributed due to technical problems and being inferior to another group. With this, the thug gets confused about what he is trying to say. Then the protagonist says that if they look real, no one will notice the difference, and that he just needs 2 hours. The thug decides to see what he is capable of. Lin Shu starts working with the machines all night long. In the morning, he wakes up the thug to show his work. He shows that he made $5 million. The bald thug asks if he did all that during the night, but he already assumes it wouldn't be of very good quality. The thug inspects the notes and realizes they are practically perfect. He then asks what the protagonist's name is. He names himself Mr. Wei while extending his hand to the thug. In another counterfeit group, the members notice someone trying to steal their work. The forger Wu Di takes Mr. Wei's notes and asks if that isn't real money. His partner, Wu Ming, asks if he remembers a partner named Yin Chao. Wu Di says they destroyed him and were trying to sell the machine. Wu Ming says some kids saw all the money coming out of his warehouse. He adds that it was Mr. Wei. The scar-faced thug orders them to bring Mr. Wei to work for them, but the glasses-wearing thug says he already tried to recruit him. Wei asked if it would be a part-time job and said he would need a partner. The scar-faced thug stares at Mr. Wei while removing the blindfold from his eyes. The protagonist analyzes the turns they took to try to figure out where they were. The scar-faced thug asks him to state his real name. Mr. Wei continues to analyze the place until he notices it is an abandoned workshop. But at that moment, he is tied up and surrounded by Wu Di's men. The protagonist says his name is Wei Shenmo as he starts to free himself from the restraints. Wu Di grabs a stack of fake money and tries to intimidate him into working for them. But Wei stands up, showing that he has already freed himself from the ropes. Wei says they can be partners if he wants. Wu Di mentions that they could kill him right there and no one would notice. But Wei says they would lose more than just a partner. They would lose the chance to achieve their dreams. The scar-faced man says they're not at Disneyland to talk about dreams. Mr. Wei uses the memory of an orator to say that his dream is for there to be no more counterfeit notes in the world, because everyone would use their notes and never know which were fake. Mr. Wei says he has the technology and they have the connections. If they cooperated, Mr. Wei would produce every day and reach 100 million yuan in counterfeit notes. Woody asks if he can really produce that much, as the current production couldn't achieve that. Mr. Wei confirms but demands 51% of the shares and 10 million in real money. The glasses-wearing thug complains that this would make it seem like they worked for Mr. Wei, but the scar-faced thug agrees as long as they can be involved in the production process. Mr. Wei accepts the request and they make a deal. But deep down, Woody was already planning to steal Mr. Wei's skills and get rid of him later. Meanwhile, Mr. Wei planned to get rid of them as soon as he got the money for the Shens. At the family mansion, Shenmo continues thinking about how she would recover the lost money. The maid mentions a guy who is trying to ruin the family's business, and she just says they need something soon. The ex-boss arrives at her house to talk, which worries the protagonist. He says he came to help her, but Shenmo says she doesn't need it and that he should at least hate her for firing him. The boss says that pursuing her was the reason he was working with the Shen group. He says that even though he is not from a family as wealthy as hers, he intends to help her get the 10 million she needs. All he asks is that she divorces Lin Shu. He also mentions that she knows what he did at the Dorset Hotel in Longhao. Lin Shu realizes that he knew about the hotel and suspects he had something to do with it. But the lady says she is not that desperate and doesn't need his help. The young man hits him with a broom and tells his ex-boss not to underestimate his wife. Lin Shu also says that maybe the money will fall right in front of them, knowing what will happen. The boss complains again, saying that Lin Shu doesn't match a beautiful woman like Shenmo. A huge box hits the boss in the face and knocks him down. The bald thug appears, saying he brought 10 million to help Shenmo at Mr. Wei's request. Shenmo asks if he knows this Mr. Wei and why he would give her so much money. The bald thug says he just planned to gain her trust. He adds that if she wants to see him, she only needs to go to the Dorset Hotel, in the same room where she saw Lin Shu. The ex-boss gets worried hearing this, showing Lin Shu that he was hiding his involvement. Shenmo gets ready to go to the hotel to meet Wei. The boss watches her enter while planning to go as well. He says he intends to wait 5 minutes to see who the guy is who plans to steal his woman. The lady arrives at the room where she had seen Lin Shu before. When she opens the door, she sees Lin Shu in bed with several girls again. The lady gets angry again and her aura starts to flow more intensely. But the TV turns on and Mr. Wei appears, saying that it is a misunderstanding. Shenmo attacks the people on the bed, asking how it could be a misunderstanding. She discovers that it was not Lin Shu, but a disguised man. Mr. Wei explains that it was a transfiguration ability from South Korea that allowed someone to impersonate another person. He says that 3 years ago, the person she saw at the hotel was not Lin Shu. Shenmo believes she may have blamed him for 3 years for something he never did. The lady asks why he is doing all this for her. The young man knows he cannot reveal his disguise now and decides to improvise. He mentions that he is only alive today thanks to Lin Shu, even though he doesn't know him. Shenmo asks if he knows who set him up 3 years ago. The boss bursts in, demanding to know about Mr. Wei. Mr. Wei reveals that the culprit was the boss. The boss tries to understand what's happening while Shenmo stares at him seriously. Ignoring everything, he says that Shenmo is his wife and he wouldn't stand by watching someone try to steal her. But Mr. Wei says that he is mistaken because she is married. He adds that the boss knows this well because he was the one responsible for the divorce. One of the girls approaches the boss and says it's been a long time since he called for them. The boss tries to act confused and says he doesn't know them. But the girl reveals that he was the one with them 3 years ago in that room. The protagonist acknowledges that it was good to have hacked the system to know who was there, and now the boss has no escape. Even as he tries to explain, the girls keep talking about how amazing he was 3 years ago. Shenmo asks Mr. Wei for his contact information so she can repay him. But Mr. Wei only asks her to treat her husband better. That night at the Shen mansion, Lin Shu prepares to meet with his partners. The lady asks where he is going, and he says he is going to the warehouse where he sleeps. She holds his hands and says he doesn't need to do that anymore. The lady adds that he will sleep in her room. The pink-haired maid named Shou Hui is talking on the phone while the protagonist watches her. The boy looks at her while activating his lip-reading memories. She talks on the phone with someone, saying she told them not to trust microloans. She starts crying, saying she will talk to her brother and that they shouldn't worry. Lin Shu notices she is in financial trouble and decides it would be a great chance to do something. Mr. Wei starts researching chemicals. The bald thug appears, asking what Mr. Wei is planning now. He orders the bald man to transfer 200,000 yuan to an account in his name. The bald man wonders if he is actually a philanthropist. Mr. Wei says this is even more important and that he will need a lot of help for it. His counterfeit money group gathers for a banquet that leaves Wu Dai speechless. He mentions that Mr. Wei really managed to fulfill the promise of the 100 million. He adds that he has learned a lot from him, which has helped a lot. But Mr. Wei mentions that he is the only one benefiting because he owns 51% of the shares. The scar-faced thug mentions that it was an equivalent exchange while giving a sadistic smile. Wei says he could think of a better way to kill someone than poisoning their drink. The pair of thugs don't understand what he is saying. Wei says he knows exactly what he means and that when you do business in the underworld, you should expect to be stabbed in the back. He throws the cup away, which impresses the scar-faced thug. His henchmen appear to detain him. Mr. Wei sits again, watching the group gather in front of him. Wudai reveals that since they understood his technique, he was no longer necessary to keep alive. Mr. Wei asks if he doesn't intend to finish eating so as not to waste the food. The scar-faced thug reveals that he knows Mr. Wei doesn't have spiritual power, so he can only surrender. He adds that there's no way for him to escape because the room is locked. But Mr. Wei says he had planned all this, confusing Wudi. Mr. Wei asks if he believes spiritual power is the strongest force in the world. The scar-faced thug asks if there is something stronger while he doesn't notice the room filling with gas. The gas starts spreading through the closed room and everyone wonders if it's poisonous. Mr. Wei mentions that knowledge and ingenuity are the most powerful forces. The day before, he had talked to the bald thug about a remote control for an anesthetic bomb. The bald thug was responsible for placing the bomb in the air circulation system for when it was needed. The result was a room full of gas with the thugs unconscious and Mr. Wei victorious. The scar-faced thug mentions that his boss is the boss of the entire Tokyo underworld. But before he can continue threatening Wei, he just orders him to surrender once and for all. Wudi asked if he wanted to get all the 100 million he had made, but Mr. Wei asks what he would use that money for when he could have earned it legally. He notes that the gas has already weakened them and mentions that his notes didn't enter circulation, so he takes the opportunity to incinerate everything. The scar-faced thug asks why he is doing this. Mr. Wei responds that the boss had offended a very dangerous person. With that, he leaves after dealing with the thugs and the counterfeit money. Returning to the Shen mansion, the bald man wonders who he really is. The pink-haired maid sees Lin Chu arriving late and asks what he's been doing until this hour. Before he can answer, she decides to ask him for a favor. Xiao Hui says she knows he's acquainted with Mr. Wei. She asks Lin Chu to introduce her to Mr. Wei because she wants to thank him. The bald man returns and hands over Lin Chu's glasses, calling him Mr. Wei. The maid then understands that he is Mr. Wei. Lin Chu tries to brush it off, saying the bald man is confused. He realizes what's happening and tries to go along with it. But the maid recognizes Mr. Wei's glasses and mentions they are the same. She concludes that Lin Chu is trying to pass himself off as Mr. Wei and says she will inform the lady. Seeing no escape, he decides to admit he is Mr. Wei. Xiao Hu can't believe it and says he was really trying to pretend to be Mr. Wei. The boy reveals that he knew about the 200,000 yuan she needed, and that's why she was going to see him. The maid asks how he knew that, but he says he will show her something. The boy reveals he has the two thugs who had deceived the Shen family in the trunk of his car. He also adds that the 10 million yuan he obtained came from them. The maid still can't believe him and says she will inform the lady. The boy mentions that if anyone threatens to reveal his identity, he will have to act. He tells the bald man to take out his phone and take some pictures. Lin Chu kisses the maid. He mentions that if she thinks of telling the lady anything, he will show the photo and claim she tried to seduce him. The maid gets angry with him, but he asks how she dares call him an idiot after kissing him. In Shen Mo's room, she waits for her husband to return. The next day, she wakes him up annoyed, asking where he was. She starts poking his face with her foot, saying she was waiting for him to come back. The boy mentions that he was forced to keep cleaning late by the maid. She calls Xiao Hui to hear her side of the story. The maid says he was slacking with the housework, so she made him work more. Since their stories match, she accepts it and lets it go. The lady mentions that her father-in-law's birthday is in 3 days and hands him her card to buy a gift for him. But the boy refuses her card, saying he will get a present with his own money. The maid says she will return to her duties. The boy says he also needs to get back to work and runs out of the room. Shen Mo watches him seriously, wondering if something is wrong. The protagonist thanks the maid for helping him with her comment. She says she never had to lie to the lady until today, and she feels bad for doing it this time. Lin Chu apologizes to her for that and asks her to calm down. He says he couldn't explain everything even if she asked why he doesn't reveal where the money came from. Lin Chu says that to the Shen family members, he is just trash, and no one would take him seriously. That's why he needs to gain more influence before explaining everything to Shen Mo. He says he has helped them until now, but he needs her help to keep his secret. Xiao Hui apologizes for everything that happened, and he just says it's all in the past. Lin Chu takes the opportunity to ask what might be a good gift for his father-in-law. The maid says he has many interests, and recently he has become obsessed with investment films. She concludes by saying he loves a popular actress named Cheng Jing. She shows a photo of the actress, which triggers a memory from Lin Chu's film director memories. A memory of her posing for photos. Another of her, with the director eating like a happy couple. The boy realizes he discovered more about her from the memories than he intended. He decides to go talk to her for his father-in-law's birthday present. The two head to the Cheng family mansion. Xiao Hui asks why he wanted her to come with him. Mr. Wei says he knows she's a cultivator like the lady and he will need her to protect him. He says he knows about cultivation levels and domain divisions. The maid mentions that the lady is in the 7th layer of the foundation, while she is in the third core layer. He says that Xiaohui is stronger than Shenmo, and she responds that the lady always made sure they trained together. Wei enters the gate code, and the maid asks if he has been there before. He mentions that he used to live there. The memories he possesses are from director Zhang Ji, Chang Jing's former boyfriend. One day, a powerful tycoon named Jing Ming promised to invest in his next film. The problem arose when Zhang Ji discovered that Jing Ming had forced Chang Jing to be with him. When Zhang Ji tried to uncover the truth, he was killed by Jing Ming, who pushed him off the penthouse. Jing Ming stole Zhang Ji's entire life and used his death to boost the film, becoming even richer. He also propelled Chang Jing's career, making her a very famous actress. The two enter the Chang mansion. Chang Jing comes out of the shower and asks who they are and how they got in. The boy introduces himself as Zhang Ji. Chang Jing gets angry and attacks them. Xiaohui, who's also in the core realm, creates a barrier to protect them. Mr. Wei starts revealing things he knows about her, like her allergies and how they met. Chang Jing still doesn't believe him, saying that could all be found online. He continues revealing information like a mole under her breast and her favorite position. Chang Jing realizes he really is Zhang Ji and says he has said enough. He explains that his soul entered this body and that when he woke up, he came to see her. The actress hugs her boyfriend and says she missed him terribly. She asks why he killed himself and begs him not to abandon her again. Zhang Ji explains that he was pushed the day he found the two of them in bed. He adds that he intends to take revenge and reclaim everything Jing Ming stole. As they leave, the maid scolds Mr. Wei for lying to the actress. The boy reveals the truth about his power and the 10,000 memories he possesses. She asks what use that could be, and he responds that he plans to take the money from all the major families in Longcheng. The boy mentions that he needs her to cover for him in the Shen household. They cannot know the truth and must think he is a useless person, not the true Mr. Wei. The maid asks why she should help him. Wei mentions that she wouldn't be helping him, but rather the lady, as he would be secretly assisting her. Xiaohui agrees to the idea on one condition. She demands that he always take her along on his nightly missions to avoid upsetting the lady. In the office of the Jingxi group, a man talks to a girl with pink hair saying he knows nothing about Mr. Wei. The boss Jing Ying enters asking his father for money to buy a gift for the lady's father. His father berates him for all the things he's done and asks why he doesn't give up. He says Jing Yang just finds her attractive and hands him the card to make him leave. The boss's father returns to his meeting with the pink-haired girl, saying he will help find Mr. Wei. Jing Yang seizes the opportunity and claims to know Mr. Wei and how to find him. The girl stands up, demonstrating her power and demands he take her to him immediately. Jing Yang says he can't contact him but knows Mr. Wei's friend. The girl asks who his friend is. The boss says it's Lin Chu, the Shen family's son-in-law. Lin Chu wonders how a body with such an intense aura can't use that power. The maid enters, talking about the birthday party and asking about the gift. But the boy dismisses it, saying the family despises him so much that it doesn't matter. This angers the maid, who says it's all the more reason to do it. After all, it was Shenmo who stayed by his side when he was in a coma. No matter how much she was asked to rest, she refused. This made the maid sad to see such a situation. Of course, the protagonist already has something prepared for the occasion and was just joking. The next day, during the birthday party, the celebration was already in full swing. There were several items that were invaluable treasures. The young master says he will give the legendary elixir of immortality. This is a once-in-a-lifetime item known as Tai Sui. Seeing such an item made the patriarch completely happy. The protagonist, seeing the situation, starts laughing mockingly at the item. This quickly infuriates the young master, who asks what's so funny. He was laughing because the item was fake and he had been deceived. Her brother gets even more irritated and tells Shenmo to control her husband. The protagonist says he knows the item and can prove its authenticity. He asks for the cake knife to prove his point. The protagonist starts tinkering with the statue and says the scammer was very skillful. But when he removes an outer layer, he reveals the truth. The statue is actually a disguised inflatable doll. Revealing the truth, the lady's brother gets even more irritated while being ridiculed. The father-in-law loses his patience and says they need to think about how to defeat the Jing family. He mentions that the star of the Jing family has been profiting from her success. The father-in-law orders them to find a way to make Chang Jing betray her family and join theirs to manage the group. People in the background comment on the group being worth hundreds of billions. They also mention that she has a contract that can't be broken and her close relationship with Jing Ming. Lin Chu says they could ask for something more challenging because the lady could solve this with one phone call. People around start wondering if the lady has contact with Chang Jing. Shenmo asks if he was joking when he said that. Her brother confidently says that if she fails, Lin Chu will have to kneel and beg for forgiveness. The boy asks what will happen if she succeeds, and he says in that case, he will apologize. The boy picks up the phone and says he will call Chang Jing. The lady's brother says it's a trap because she wouldn't be able to answer since she's live. During the broadcast, Chang Jing ends up answering the phone. Lin Chu hands the phone to the lady and asks her to invite Chang Jing to join the Shen family. Shenmo introduces herself and makes the request to Chang Jing, asking if they could close a contract. She acknowledges the request and says she would love to be hired by the Shen family. Lin Shu tells his brother-in-law to keep his promise. He remembers asking Cheng Jing to answer the phone and agree to any requests she received. He continues provoking his brother-in-law, telling him to apologize. Despite not believing it, he is forced by his father to keep his promise. The father-in-law says Shen Mo will become the president of the family's entertainment group. The next day, the pink-haired girl approaches Lin Shu to attack him. She observes him and notices his intense celestial power, feeling surprised. She recognizes the excess of souls in that body and wonders how he withstands so many souls. The girl understands that she needs to attack first to gain an advantage. An aura appears behind her, saying she couldn't kill him. The girl retreats quickly, while the white-haired girl observes her. She recognizes that this white-haired girl is in an even higher realm than she is. The white-haired girl uses her aura and traps her in an enchantment. She explains that Lin Shu is the reincarnation of her love from 1,000 years ago, and that if he needs to be killed, she would be the only one to do it. The swordswoman asks if she was the one who delivered all those souls to Lin Shu. The girl mentions that she used her aura to restore his past memories so he could remember her. The swordswoman asks if that is the spirit summoning ability. The white-haired girl approaches her and holds the swordswoman's face. The swordswoman uses her sword to push her away. Lin Shu notices that he has managed to organize the 10,000 memories, though he still has much to discover. Shen Mo approaches him and thanks him for helping her during the birthday. He says he only did what Mr. Wei asked to be done. The lady says she has something to ask. She asks what the connection is between him and Mr. Wei. The boy replies that Mr. Wei is just a friend who wishes for her to treat him well. The lady questions what exactly treating him well would mean. He says it depends a lot on how she interprets it. The lady mentions she intends to make him her deputy because she believes he has the ability for it. The boy asks her not to do that because he is just useless, but she tells him not to underestimate himself. He asks the lady not to destroy her own reputation by trying to help him. Shen Mo hugs her husband. She acknowledges that despite the harsh treatment, he never complained and always cared for her. Lin Shu believes he will inherit the family's fortune, so he sees no reason to care about the company. The swordswoman's fight with the white-haired girl continues as the swordswoman fails to hit her. The swordswoman gives up the battle, saying she is not qualified to be her opponent. The white-haired girl decides to release the enchantment as long as she doesn't attempt to kill the protagonist. She says she wouldn't kill him, even though she hasn't given up. The enchantment disappears along with the swordswoman's clothes and sword, leaving her exposed to the couple. The white-haired girl explains that she doesn't trust her, so she changed her clothes and removed her sword. The swordswoman jumps on the protagonist, calling him brother. The boy is confused about what is happening as she claims to be his sister from Japan. She gets close to his ear and says she knows his secret and orders him to cooperate. Seeing no other option, he plays along with the story of having a younger sister. He takes the opportunity to move his little sister away from the lady to talk, although this makes her more curious. A swordswoman named Ryoko mocks the boy, saying he was being too obvious. The boy asks if she plans to seek revenge, but Ryoko explains she can't because of the white-haired girl. The boy is curious about her return and asks where they met. Ryoko uses her aura and throws the protagonist against the wall, complaining about his question. She explains that not being able to kill him doesn't mean she can't attack him. The little sister decides to analyze the 10,000 souls he possesses. Unfortunately, without spiritual power, the souls become much less useful to her. The boy disagrees with her, trying to show that the souls could still be useful. He uses a smoke bomb to surprise his sister, but as she is much more skilled, his little sister manages to immobilize him anyway. Ryoko says he will be her obedient little brother, and the boy has no choice but to comply. The boy begins to think about how he can get rid of her. Lin Shu uses one of his memories and creates a plan to deal with her. He picks a fruit and peels it to give to his little sister. Ryoko accepts the fruit with joy, praising his skill at cutting it. As she is about to eat it, the boy starts smiling at her. Ryoko notices his attitude and realizes he tried to poison her. The boy realizes he needs to improvise to make his plan work. Ryoko mocks him while holding the fruit in front of her mouth. Taking advantage of her attitude, the boy pushes the fruit into Ryoko's open mouth to force her to eat it. Ryoko gets angry with him, and the boy explains that he made her swallow a toxic pill. This pill is called 3 seconds of digestion, and she wouldn't be able to use spiritual power to neutralize it. The boy takes the opportunity to get back at her, saying now she would have to obey. The little sister says she won't become friendlier just because of the poison. She goes on to threaten to take him to Tokyo and torture him to get the antidote. The boy already anticipates that she wouldn't be able to reach Tokyo with the effects of the poison. She still doesn't give up, saying she will continue with her plan or die trying. The boy takes the opportunity to make a deal with her. Ryoko becomes curious about this deal. The boy decides to exchange the antidote for her services as a bodyguard. She refuses to work for him, saying she won't accept such a threat, but he says it's an agreement. The boy explains that he plans to become the richest man in Longhao and would give her money and the antidote to compensate her. The little sister still doesn't believe him and tells him to get real. The boy mentions that with his 10,000 souls, having such a goal isn't that absurd. The little sister asks how he can handle so many things in his head. The boy explains that he uses his memories to manage resources since he can't be a cultivator. He explains everything he has already done and mentions that his plan is to unite the 4 families under his command. Ryoko begins to believe he might succeed and says she might reconsider after receiving the antidote. Linshu gives her a pill that reduces the effect of the toxin and says that if she wants the antidote, she needs to help him. Ryoko still distrusts him, and the boy says she can return the pill if she doesn't trust him. She takes the pill, and the boy explains that the side effect is that she would fall in love with him. But it was a lie to mock her, and the boy leaves, making her irritated. At the Shen group, the lady's brother completes his plan to ruin her business. The brother's assistant says he is finishing destroying the internal information. The brother says he intends to send a message for no one to mess with him. At the Cheng residence, the actress is slapped by her partner, who complains about her accepting the contract. Cheng Jing explains that Mr. Wei forced her to do it and that he wants revenge for Zhang. Jing Ming gets irritated and decides to put a bounty on Mr. Wei's head. He orders a reward of 1 billion yuan for his head, dead or alive. But Cheng Jing watches him, smiling as everything is going according to their plan. The next day, Cheng Jing heads to a meeting at the Shen Entertainment Group. Upon arriving in the room, she encounters Mr. Wei, who asks her what she wanted to talk about. She jumps into his lap and hugs him, glad to see Zhang again. Mr. Wei explains that he only possesses Zhang's soul, but she says she'll treat him just like Zhang. Mr. Wei asks her to quickly explain what she wants. Cheng Jing explains about the 1 billion bounty on his head. The boy is impressed by how much Jing Ming was willing to risk. Cheng Jing explains that she did what he asked and that Jing Ming assaulted her. She presses his hand against her face so he can feel how swollen it is. Cheng Jing says he should plan something to avoid a direct confrontation. She suggests he take advantage of the fact that Jing Ming wants to kill him and kill him first. The boy is incredulous that she would mention murder even though she claims to be forced. She says she intends to help him with this plan, give him a chance to kill Jing Ming. But Mr. Wei admits that he knows she was behind Zhang's murder and wanted to do it again. The actress is confused by what he's saying. Mr. Wei reminds her that he has Zhang Zhe's soul, so he understood what happened. The actress was very dissatisfied with Zhang's conditions and therefore seduced Jing Ming. After that, she made Jing Ming accuse him of domestic violence to get rid of Zhang. The result was her being able to hide the truth and still benefit from Zhang's death to increase her own reputation. At the moment, she wanted to repeat the plan because regardless of who wins between the two, she would come out on top. The actress drops the mask and admits that he's not as stupid as she believed. But she knew he didn't have spiritual power, and without the mate, he would be defenseless. Mr. Wei challenges her to a fight, and the actress goes after him for the reward. But then the wardrobe opens, and the swordswoman shoots out from inside and defeats Cheng Jing. The boy taunts his bodyguard, and she just says she was afraid she wouldn't get the antidote if he died. Mr. Wei explains that he knew her truth a long time ago and tells her to deliver the good news to Jing Ming. He says she can reveal who Mr. Wei is and explain why he wants her to join the Shen company. The actress doesn't quite understand his plan. Wei says she should reveal his identity as the eldest son of the Shen family. His plan is to accuse Shen Chi's sister of being Mr. Wei. The miss arrives at the Shen Group building to see the businesses she acquired. The security guards wonder how she managed to do it, mentioning Cheng Jing's contract. Upon entering her office, she is greeted by her brother's employee. The miss asks if he prepared the accounts as she had instructed. The employee says he has prepared everything she asked for. He also includes a threatening message from her brother, saying he would still have control of the entertainment group. Shenmo simply ignores his comment and tells him to leave. But as she begins to look at the charts, she notices something wrong. Shenmo realizes they were fake accounts and that they intended to keep her only as a figurehead. The miss receives a call. Mr. Wei summons her to talk about the company's false accounts. She becomes worried that he already knows about it and asks if he was watching her. Wei explains that he knows about it and also knows that they destroyed the real accounting books. What they didn't expect was that Mr. Wei had already taken the lead and obtained all the data. He explains that he had all the company records and would hand them over to her to gain control of the group. The miss is curious about why he was helping her. Mr. Wei ignores her question and simply hangs up the call. The brother's employee leaves, mocking the miss for thinking she could defy them. The miss calls the employee, who was Director Roach, to her office to talk. Since he seemed indifferent, the miss begins to throw some dirt at him. The director is puzzled as she continues to mention more of his secrets. Realizing she had a lot of information, he decides to listen to what she has to say. In her office, the director kneels and starts beating himself up to apologize for what he did. Shenmo forces him to transfer back all the money he stole and tells him to keep an eye on her brother. The director should report every order he gives to the director. Shenmo's brother contacts Cheng Jing to discuss her work. The actress accepts his request and invites him to the hotel in Longhua the next day. She confides in her partner that she has arranged a meeting with Shen Che, and they could meet. She flirts with Jing Ming, telling him they would be at the Dorset Hotel and Mr. Wei would also be there. The actress welcomes her brother to the hotel room for their meeting. Shen Che loses focus as he watches her seductively. He mentions that even though he's not the president, he's still the eldest son of the family. Cheng Jing deflects his advances while asking if he's not afraid of Miss Shen finding out. The brother asks what the problem would be as he continues to scrutinize every detail of her body. Cheng Jing asks him to try on an outfit she brought. The brother believes it's some sort of costume and gets excited even though he doesn't know what it is. The actress says he'll understand when he puts it on, and she'll change in another room. The brother tries to get her to change in the same room with him, but she makes up an excuse to leave the room. Upon leaving the room, she meets Jing Ming and his thugs, wanting to know if Mr. Wei was there. She confirms it and says the rest is up to them. The brother begins to dress while imagining she has strange tastes. After dressing, Mr. Wei's mask activates a trap that traps his head. With the trap, the brother can't say anything other than cover his entire face. Jing Ming bursts through the door and prepares to deal with Mr. Wei. They begin to hold him down while the brother tries to say something to no avail. Jing Ming says it was the first time someone challenged him, and he believes Mr. Wei is very brave. The brother understands what was happening, and a voice starts coming from a device in his tie. The boy was hiding in the next room, speaking through the device in his tie, telling them to beat Mr. Wei. He also adds that otherwise, he would make their family collapse. The actress's partner gets excited by Mr. Wei's arrogance and decides to listen to his request. The thugs begin to beat the disguised brother. The maid serves tea while asking what he was observing so much from the next room. The boy explains that he's just watching his opponent being beaten without being able to escape. The thugs continue to beat the brother until he can't take it anymore. The actress's partner orders them to continue until he decides to go talk to Mr. Wei. The boy sends another message through the device saying he prefers to die. Jing Ming gets angry and decides to accept his request again. The brother trembles in fear at the direction the conversation was taking. A strong aura emerges and blows the door wide open, preventing the thugs from continuing. Jing Ming gets angry at that and asks who is interfering. One of the brother's thugs appears, threatening Jing Ming and asking if he intends to start a war against the Shen family. The actress's partner explains that their target was Mr. Wei. He says the outfit he was wearing was evidence that he was the same guy. But the brother's thug removes his mask and reveals who he really was. He lists the brother and says he won't let anything else happen to him. Jing Ming tries to explain that they were deceived by Cheng Jing and Mr. Wei, and they were planning against them. The brother's thug stares at his outfit and notices the sound device coming from the boy's tie. He says he'll deal with Jing Ming later because he knows Mr. Wei was nearby. The brother's thug releases an aura that removes his soul, impressing the former boss. Jing Ming explains that the thug was Sima Ti, one of the great guardians and excellent at tracking. Sima Ti begins to search the rooms for Mr. Wei. The boy realizes that Shen She's thug was after them, which could be dangerous. He mentions that if it only depended on strength, they wouldn't stand a chance against him. The maid tries to think of a plan to protect Mr. Wei's identity. The boy thinks of using a magician's memory to create an illusion. But the maid stops him and tells him to just follow her plan. Yahello throws him on the bed forcefully. He's confused by that as she starts undressing. She reminds him that everything she's doing is for Miss Shen's good. Sima Ti continues his search through the rooms for Mr. Wei. When he enters Lin Chu's room, he only sees the maid's back. He starts to approach while she tries to pretend they're just an ordinary couple. The boy notices that she is really willing to go to great lengths to help Miss Shen. The henchman recognizes who they were as he watches them. The maid realizes that she wouldn't convince him with just a little and decides she would have to take a risk. She kisses the boy to help convince the henchman. She throws herself on top of the boy and knocks him onto the bed. The henchman gets quite excited even though he remembers he wasn't the focus of the search. Sima Ti recognizes that he may have discovered a weakness of Shenmo. The brother calls for the boy to talk. He immediately asks what he was doing the day before. Lin Chu says he was doing household chores and that the maid could confirm it. But the brother accuses him of being at the hotel because they found him there. The boy says he found out the truth about him being Mr. Wei. The brother starts laughing uncontrollably at his comment, so much so that he starts feeling pain from the beating he took the day before. The brother tries to compose himself and says he knows about the boy's affair with the maid. The henchman shows what he saw and asks what Miss Shen would think if she saw that. The boy panics, saying he would be kicked out if she found out about that. Shen Shi says he won't tell her, but in exchange, he should spy on Miss Shen for him. He says if the boy doesn't agree, he will make it public. The boy sees no other option and just accepts the deal. The brother smiles and dismisses him while feeling like he won. He turns to Sima Ti and asks what the Jing family intended to do to compensate him. Sima Ti explains that they gave him money and were willing to help him take down Shen Mo. The brother gets even more excited with that while imagining how Miss Shen will deal with it. The maid asks if the brother found out Mr. Wei's true identity. The boy explains that he revealed himself and he didn't believe it, which relieves Xiao Kuei. But as she touches his hands, she remembers what she did and asks him to pretend it never happened. The boy sees she's quite cute and thanks his luck for not being a scoundrel as he could try to seduce her. Trying to ignore his thoughts, the boy decides to focus on getting stronger. He reveals that the current case made him realize he still relies on spiritual power and should stay home. The maid mentions he has great skills and asks if it's not a waste. Lin Chu says he plans to write novels and articles using Mr. Wei's name. His plan is to write about returning to different dynasties to accumulate wealth. The maid already anticipates that it resembles a common pattern in novels. but he says his unique point is the historical knowledge involving the truth. He mentions that his stories will have some of the most advanced knowledge in the world. He believes that since the audience isn't limited to ordinary readers, it could help him. His intention is to break the limitations of subject categories in novels and blend branches of learning. But the maid points out that his plan resembles more an academic article than a novel. The boy mentions that it would still be a novel about a guy who becomes the richest man in the world. He starts thinking of a name for his novel. He decides to call it The Path to World Domination. The boy continues to write his novel and believes he'll be able to publish it soon. He recognizes that his experiences helped him realize he can call on multiple souls at once. This idea is useful for building a memory palace for himself. The boy tests using the memories of a poison expert and a weapons master. With that, he becomes capable of making a poisoned mini crossbow for stealth attacks. Someone knocks on the door to call him. It was Samati wanting to talk to him. The boy answers and asks what he would like to talk about. Samati says he sees great potential in Lin Chu, but he doesn't quite understand where that came from and worries he knows the truth. The boy remains cautious as the henchman reminds him he saw the boy with the maid at the hotel. The henchman says he felt like he should befriend him at that moment. The boy remains puzzled about what he wanted. Samati says he wants to invite him to the Prodigy Society where they gather people with strange abilities. The henchman says he knows the boy will find it interesting. The boy tries to refuse, saying he's just a wasteful son-in-law. But Samati insists, saying he's very humble. He reveals that Lin Chu's actions in betraying Miss Shen already make him respect him a lot. Lin Chu doesn't quite understand despite agreeing with him. The henchman says his initiation would be in 3 days. He already mentions that there's a fee of 1 million to join the organization. The boy feels like he's being ripped off at their request. In the Shen group building, the actress is desperate, asking for help from Mr. Wei. She explains that after what happened, the Jing family froze her accounts and surrounded her house. But he says now she would have no more doubts about her loyalty to the Shen family. The actress acknowledges that he had planned all this so she would be forced to work with Miss Shen. Mr. Wei mentions he didn't care if she refused because she could survive by selling her body. He says any support she received from the Jing family she could receive from the Shen family. But he adds that she should hand over half of the salary she received from the Shen family. When she tries to question, the swordswoman points her sword at her neck, making her accept the order. Mr. Wei mentions she would become his human ATM. The little sister says she finished assisting him and that the actress wouldn't be a problem anymore. She finishes by asking for the poison antidote. Mr. Wei points to the pill and hands it to her. The swordswoman mistrusts him and asks if he's really giving away the antidote so easily. He provokes her, saying if she doesn't trust him, she doesn't have to take it because he wouldn't force her. As she takes the pill, he reveals he never poisoned her in the first place. The swordswoman is incredulous at this information. He explains he was in a hurry, so he just popped the first pill he had into her mouth, and the rest was all lies. The little sister gets angry and raises her aura while threatening Mr. Wei. He prepares by activating the poison expert's memory. He whistles, and with that, the swordswoman's aura disappears completely. The boy explains that although the pill wasn't poisonous this time, it temporarily disables spiritual power. He adds that if he whistles, her power will disappear for 5 minutes. The swordswoman doesn't believe him again and attacks him. But as she doesn't have power, Mr. Wei easily stops her. He says that without her power, the swordswoman is just a little girl. The little sister threatens him again, reminding him that she subdued all of Tokyo alone. The boy holds her arm as he observes her. He approaches and kisses her. The boy teases her, saying not only did he manage to touch her, but he also kissed her. The little sister stares at him, imagining that at some point she would make him her pet. In the Shen group building, Miss Shen asks how Mr. Wei convinced her to join them. She also asks if the actress knows who he is and why he wanted her to do this. The actress mentions she promised not to reveal anything about him. Still, she tries to make Miss Shen find out by asking if she doesn't imagine he might be someone close. Miss Shen starts thinking about what she said and imagines she might know his identity. The boy rests on his bed reading when the swordswoman appears in his room. He asks what she's doing. The swordswoman immediately threatens him, asking if he doesn't want Miss Shen to find out Mr. Wei's identity. She jumps on him and demands the antidote to not expose the truth to her. The boy says he won't hand over the antidote while Miss Shen approaches his room. Shedmo enters the room and the boy realizes he needs to improvise. He shouts that he couldn't be with his little sister Suwon because it would be an impossible match. The boy pushes the little sister away, saying they couldn't be together even with a marriage contract. He approaches Miss Shen to prevent her from thinking something wrong. He starts crying, saying he has no interest in her and that she shouldn't believe the little sister's words. Suwon says he's talking a bunch of nonsense, but Miss Shen believes him and says the little sister isn't really his type. Miss Shen grabs his wrist and asks him to answer if he's Mr. Wei. Miss Shen stares at him worriedly, asking if he would be the one who helped her so much. Suwon tries to worsen his situation, saying she was right and that the boy was deceiving her, but Shedmo tells her to be quiet. Miss Shen says that regardless of what he did, it was for her own good, and Suwon shouldn't interfere. The swordswoman doesn't understand what happened because she thought they were going to team up to complain about him. Because of that, the swordswoman decides not to help her with that. The boy mentions he's not Mr. Wei and that she was mistaken. But Miss Shen says she wasn't mistaken. He has been secretly helping her. She explains that Lin Chu was the only one who stood by her side even when so many were joining to bring her down. Miss Shen remembers 5 years ago when she cut ties with her family because of the arranged marriage. Her brother had blackmailed her classmates to force her to stay home, which ended up working very well with the students demanding she stop going to school. But still, Lin Chu stood by her side, complaining to the class representative. Representative Feng Xin questions him for offending Miss Shen. He rebels and tells her to stop with her excuses and asks if she would kill someone if ordered to. The boy adds that he doesn't know what made her brother do that. With that, Miss Shen approaches him for his attitude. She asks if Lin Chu has a girlfriend. He replies no, which seems to cheer her up. Miss Shen remembers everything they did and mentions that she would be his girlfriend. She mentions that after that, she was never forced to marry anyone. Even without much money, she had fun with Lin Chu. Miss Shen reveals that those were the happiest moments of her school life, and that's why she could sacrifice all the most important things in her life for Lin Chu. She remembers celebrating his 20th birthday and preparing a special gift. The boy is blindfolded while listening to Miss Shen and wonders what his gift would be. She prepares and tells him he can take off the blindfold. As he removes the blindfold, he is impressed with what he sees. Miss Shen, wearing a cat outfit wrapped in a bow, says she would be his gift. Shen Mo says she realized he had always been the closest and most possible person to help her like Mr. Wei. The boy tries to change the subject, saying until recently, she thought he was a scoundrel. Miss Shen begins to question where he was when she met Mr. Wei and when her brother was attacked. The boy ends up being pushed against the wall by her aura. Shen Mo reveals she researched it and knows he wasn't at home. He says he was shopping with a maid and she could confirm that. At that moment, the boy pulls out his phone and activates an emergency plan. Miss Shen says she'll call the maid so she can confirm his story. As she tries to leave, Mr. Wei appears through the window, saying she was looking for him. She turns and finds the two of them side by side. Shen Mo observes and asks if he really isn't Mr. Wei. Mr. Wei decides to leave, distracting Miss Shen, who runs after him. Catching up to him, Miss Shen tries to talk. The boy uses the voice device to talk to her, saying he heard about recent events. He mentions he heard she was looking for him and asks why. Shen Mo says she wants to know his true identity and asks how he got into her house. Mr. Wei asks if she thinks it would be difficult for him to enter that house to see her. The maid disguise as Mr. Wei is worried that any wrong move could complicate things. But Miss Shen acknowledges that his argument is valid considering his skills. She decides to ask why he came to see her and why he insists on helping her. Mr. Wei says he has reasons even without revealing what they are because he can't say too much. The boy recognizes that he needs to take a risk to dispel her suspicions. He runs to the entrance and tells Mr. Wei to stop messing around. The boy pretends to try to remove Mr. Wei's disguise. He stumbles and bumps into Miss Shen. Mr. Wei is concerned about that and tells her to be careful. Wei pulls Miss Shen into his arms and prevents her from falling, leaving her blushing. The boy takes advantage of that moment to talk to Shen Mo as Mr. Wei. He reveals that the reason for helping Miss Shen is because he's in love with her. It was a controversial strategy and left everyone confused. The move would stop Shen Mo's suspicions for a while. At that moment, a revelation from Wei left the girl in shock and she fell silent. Lin Chu came running, intervening and saying that the girl was committed to him. His plan was a success because the girl told him not to worry about the situation. Lin Chu was worthy of an Oscar for Best Actor. He revealed his satisfaction at seeing Wei and wouldn't mind if his wife ended up cuckolding him. As an actor, he made a drama and ran into the girl's arms. There was nothing he had to worry about in that situation. Despite everything, he was one of the only people Shen Mo could trust. They also needed to work together. The couple presented was truly beautiful. Wherever they went, they attracted the attention of the company's people. It was questioned why their relationship was still working, but it wouldn't interfere with their tasks. Documents were handed over by Shen Mo. Lin Chu used his detective powers as it was a suspicious case. Shen Mo looked several times but still felt something was wrong. There could be massive corruption behind each document. It would be easy for people to be secretly hired just to do harm. After a while, Shen Mo asked if Lin Chu had found any suspicions. He reported that he didn't find anything interesting, but it wasn't a problem, because Shen Mo just wanted another perspective on the situation. If that was all she wanted to address, Lin Chu would leave the place soon. There were no people he had to save at that moment, and he could focus on the case investigation. He soon had to intervene in the investigation and find the traitors of his company. Then he managed to catch one. If he didn't say what he wanted, he would be thrown from the building. Lying wouldn't help, and giving the wrong answer even less. He was dropped and thrown from the building. Obviously, the man screamed desperately during the fall, and Wei said that was enough. To prevent anyone from being accused of murder, the girl activated her power and formed a rope to hold the accused. It left him even more in shock. There was talk of moles, that is, people who were infiltrated, and the person was accused of being part of the group. He informed that his superior had committed betrayals, but he was not directly part of the horrible group. The traitor had been sent by Jing Ying, a name that left him quite stunned when he spoke. No one in the group was alone, much less weak. Then it was questioned who besides that man was betraying. Before being fired, Jing Yang had influence in the family and planted people before leaving the company. They were individually informed with a mission and didn't know who the others involved were. If they hadn't convinced Shenmo to fire Jing Yang, the family would be much worse despite internal corruption. Wei would have to resolve the issues individually. He published an article to receive feedback from readers. It wasn't just the Shen family being affected. Jing Yang was causing corruption in various companies internally. The worst part was that the trap was involving several people around. The Shen family could be in danger because of the corruption, and they wanted to catch Jing Yang beforehand. There were doubts about how to proceed. The first steps Lin Chu would take would be to investigate cautiously. There might be fights, so he asked Su Wan if she could fight them. She would fight them anyway, but couldn't guarantee victory. The team would have to find a weakness so there would be no losses on either side. Jing Yang's weakness was Shenmo, who had been sleeping in her room for some time. Lin Chu decided to enter her room at night to start his plans. He prayed she would be asleep. Shenmo was awake. She thought the worst of his position, but he only wanted to get her phone. One message, and it was all done. The girl was outraged that he had left without doing anything. There was hesitation in sharing information with Shenmo. Revealing his identity as Wei could make things even worse. The concern was about the situation with his bodyguards. But Lin Chu said there was nothing to fear as no one would disguise themselves as a superhero. Lin Chu would be like a family member and use a recorder so there would be no incriminating evidence against him. Jing Yang couldn't escape if he managed to capture the corruption information directly. A space with shiny tables was chosen for the conversation. The young man was hunting Shenmo but only found her phone. The conversation would continue with her husband. Jing Yang wanted to talk to Shenmo but didn't want to see the face of the person in front of him. Lin Chu revealed he had the recorder in hand and informed about the corruption that was happening. The traitor was stunned. Due to the number of people working in the shadows, there were doubts about how many moles were involved in the plan. Immediately, the young man activated his power. These were his ideas not involving his father. So he decided to reveal his original identity and even changed his face. That foolish and friendly person changed to a serious person with an aura powerful enough to break everything. The aura was so strong that it broke Lin Chu's devices. Su Wan was hidden in the room and came to save the master. It wouldn't be a problem for the rich young man as he had various equipment and pills that increased his strength. Su Wan had her neck grabbed and was suffocating. Lin Chu charged at Jing Yang. A strong threat was put on the table. The traitor couldn't talk to Shenmo anymore if he continued the fight for long. He got even more agitated with the situation. He was ready for that terrifying fight. The maid ran to call Shenmo to resolve the situation. The Shen family allies could die given Jin's fury. The 4 guardians should be called and brought to the restaurant as quickly as possible. Due to the opponent's power, Lin Chu had various problems inside the restaurant. His partner was down and he couldn't use his powers. Jing Yang was 100% in control of the situation and wanted to talk about how great he was. His plan was original and had been used for quite some time. He wanted a place within the Shen family and would do anything to achieve it. Then he delivered a powerful blow to Lin Chu's stomach, sending him flying against the wall, completely broken. It was Jing Yang's chance to end that man. It seemed like the end of Lin Chu, like he was sent to a spirit dimension. He was greeted by a girl and informed about his cultivation. Also about the problems Lin Chu was causing. The spirit was a white-haired witch, and the young man wondered if he had died. Her name was Eva, and she was in love with the man. She wanted Lin Chu to know her identity and remember the life they had together. The young man would always be on the brink of death until he remembered the woman. It was his punishment for betraying her. He was weak and shouldn't go there every time. Lin Chu had the mission to classify 9,999 souls, identify them, and then remember the girl. The memories of the past life with the girl would be useful, and he could also practice dual cultivation with her. For now, he just returned to the living world with explosive powers and stronger than usual. Shenmo entered the room, but Jing Yang used teleportation to escape the situation. There was concern if Lin Chu had died due to the broken walls and floors in the restaurant. He had not passed away and was fine. He even discovered a spiritual power he never imagined having. A blue flame penetrated his eyes. Lin Chu woke up in the hospital looking as hungry as a pregnant woman. He wondered how long he had been sleeping but found Shenmo by his side. But the first thing he wanted to test was his new ability. His aura was completely restored after contacting the spirit. Shenmo got agitated upon hearing Lin Chu. He said he just forced Jing Yang a bit to confess some information. The girl was extremely happy and moved towards her husband. Lin Chu's power surged like a flamethrower. He ended up discovering the origin of his power and how to increase it. He had put himself in danger to protect the Shen family. But despite winning the fight against Jing Yang, Shenmo would not let the things done to her husband go unpunished. She would make Jing pay and ran from the hospital to start her new plans. A nurse entered the room and saw Lin Chu activating his aura again. She was going to give Lin Chu an injection to improve his condition. But if attacked by the girl, he would scream because he was apprehensive. She came with good intentions to the hospital and just wanted to heal him with vital energy. Maybe it was a way to take advantage of Lin Chu, but there were no worries because she was there to thank him for saving her life. Being the gallant man he was, he asked for help to warm him up a bit. Sto-won would use her powers to help him heal faster. Lin Chu was also being warmed and was feeling better. The healing effect was happening, but not in the usual way because Lin Chu's body was absorbing energy. He revealed the information that she had restored his spiritual power. Sto-won was happy to receive the information. It was time to use their powers to recover the stolen energy. Lin Chu could return to his usual power and might even be a little stronger. The girl also wanted to become a bit stronger and would use the situation to absorb a bit more power. However, she needed more direct contact to achieve rapid absorption. Lin Chu didn't understand the situation and pushed her away a bit. The situation was a bit strange and Lin Chu asked if it was a joke. Besides, he was also married to Shen Mo. But there would be nothing more than a closer approach. There would be a quicker and more effective transfer method because time is more than money for cultivation. Shen Mo could return at any moment within that hospital. It would be useful for him to reach his peak. Lin Chu refused the proposal due to the risk of being married, but Sto-won pushed the situation a bit further, and he had no other option but to make the spiritual power transfer faster. The two embraced and a golden aura surrounded them. This mysterious energy even made them float for a while. But Lin Chu didn't even know how he could move in that situation. The spiritual transfer took a few moments to complete, and after a good while in that medical wing, the two felt exhausted. Lin Chu was the only one who could continue his day. He reflected a bit on his core and its effectiveness, because even after hours of cultivation, he didn't feel any change. When suddenly a person appeared at the door, this person was very curious about the situation, especially about their work relationships. The person wanted to charge $1 million for the branch of the Society of Prodigies. They then decided to accept this tempting offer. The payment was made without much fuss. There was talk about Chinese names, the importance of having one with meaning. Lin Chu's name meant scoundrel. It could be a mockery from his partner. Lin Chu wondered who would be the person he nicknamed the biggest scoundrel in the world. Then the company president arrived in the presence of the two, a descendant of European nobility. To control the situation between the two, she said that the nickname wouldn't be a problem. So she just asked Lin Chu to overlook it. The president's nickname was also a bit different, because it was very strange for her face, and obviously Lin Chu joked about the situation. A bit embarrassed by the mockery, she asked them to explain a bit more about the name. The origin of the society revolving around the figure of a legendary goddess of creation was explained. It was the reason for the president's luck and prosperity. Due to being almost a sect, the woman asked Lin Chu to kneel and prove his worth so that he could reveal how he could join the society. Everyone around him called him a scoundrel, but the one doing strange things wasn't him. Taking advantage of this situation, he devised a masterstroke and asked to skip the veneration of the president by saying that the goddess was the love of his past life. It was an insult in the president's view, but Lin Chu just said he wasn't lying, because the goddess herself had said she was his beloved in the past life. The words spoken to the divine figure enraged the president, who released her spiritual aura. The one actually suffering was Lin Chu. He was being called a scoundrel and a liar even while telling the truth. The fiery-haired person stepped in and stopped the two figures so that the corporations wouldn't end there. If Lin Chu continued to insult their goddess, the president would simply go after him and no mediator could stop her. The girl decided to recall a bit about her past. She had received a divine mission. There was talk about her marital role, her commitment, and her affirmed marriage. Her future husband was a very demanding person and asked absurd things from her. She simply felt ashamed of his presence and was forced into terrible things. All she wanted was to get out of that situation as quickly as possible, but she would do anything to honor her family. The gods could observe her. Suddenly, a window was broken. A figure passed by the bastard who was with her. She was informed that she should no longer marry that person, and that they should cancel the wedding. The man was astonished by the situation. He went after the goddess who entered through the window. Climbing a window was easy, but ending the figure was even easier. The president had doubts about why she was helping and also about who she was. The figure was a goddess of creation and wanted people with spiritual qualifications to be disciples of her religion. From that moment on, she had become the president of the Society of Prodigies. She even managed to receive greater aura power. All those who loved the goddess would be her friends, and all those who criticized would be her enemies. With the feedback from the past, the situation became a bit clearer for Lin Chu. There was no chance of him joining the goddess's society if he continued to mock her. But Lin Chu wasn't insulting. He was just trying to prove that his information was true. If he could prove the truth of his marital information, the president would do anything Lin Chu wanted. Someone in that room could help. His subordinate could use his power to visualize a person's memories and prove Lin Chu's claims. Everyone should have a bit of faith at that moment for Lin Chu to be able to recall the memories of the wedding night. Since he wasn't lying, his past memories of his marriage to the goddess were discovered. Now he could do whatever he wanted with the president. He recalled the nickname Scoundrel, and the unexpected happened. Someone must have used a transfiguration ability to imitate the goddess. There were more personal memories between the two, and Lin Chu asked if she wanted to observe. The president did not want to verify the information more closely, so she just wanted a verbal confirmation. It was false information and he would not kneel to formalize the partnership. They would move forward with the initiation, but not at that moment. The president, along with other people, should decide what position the young man would hold within their society. There was also another request. She wanted to have a joint relationship with the ex-lover of her goddess. She would not let anyone else besides her be involved with Lin Chu. It was the president's crazy logic. The young man, not understanding anything, was caught off guard. Suddenly, Lin Chu found himself in an extremely important position within that society. And once again, that person who listened to him very attentively wanted to see how Lin Chu managed to have such abilities. But Lin Chu wanted to leave that place as soon as possible because he was a man of values, however low they might be. He should let the president prepare for the initiation that would happen soon. In another location, the corruption within the family caused by the Jing family was being discussed. Shenmo's brother informed her that she should have married someone else to become a better person. As the older brother, he should have more intelligence because Shenmo informed him that he was extremely mistaken. Her levels were high, and she married a worthy man. She was there to personally deliver evidence incriminating the Jing family. They wanted to cause internal conflicts in the Shen family. Shenmo had proof that Jing had spies within the Shen family for the past 5 years. Unless they investigated the Shen family's administrative papers soon, everyone would be bankrupt. Shenmo's brother made the girl unhappy as he mocked Lin Chu for negotiating with his life to obtain the evidence incriminating the family. Once again, her brother refused to see the truth. Their father intervened. From that moment on, he himself would take care of the situation. Shenmo activated her spiritual power and quickly went to the hospital where Lin Chu should be. Before that, she broke objects in front of her loved ones, and Lin Chu should no longer be criticized by his family. At the hospital, Lin Chu was received by Su Wan, who wanted to channel more spiritual power. They could continue to cultivate from the infirmary, but Lin Chu didn't want to be drained of spiritual energy. They could cultivate all night without problems because their profits would sustain the transfers. However, Xiao Hui intervened to stop their conversation. Su Wan was not very discreet about her feelings for Lin Chu. Recalling a past situation, the maid slapped Lin Chu in the face, sending him flying. He was protected by his personal bodyguard, who informed that she just wanted to increase his spiritual power. She ended up discovering their secret and asked about the hotel, but had no chance to proceed with the investigation. Shenmo appeared at the hospital with her magical aura. Everyone was stunned in the room, and the atmosphere of suspicion returned. Shenmo entered, already knowing about the hotel, and asked why Lin Chu couldn't talk about it. It was a personal matter of the Xiaohu family and would be inconvenient to discuss at that moment. It was a private matter, but Lin Chu had been sharing his secrets with the lady for a long time, so there was no reason to hide. It was an inconvenient thing to talk about, so nothing would come out of their mouths. It didn't matter much because Shenmo needed to discuss something with Lin Chu, so she asked the two to leave quickly. She commented that she had spoken with her family, and they were extremely grateful that Lin Chu had risked his life for the information. She also promised that her husband would no longer be mocked within the Shen family. She hoped they would join forces against the Jing family as it could be very useful. Unfortunately, she refused the proposal and was puzzled by her husband's decision. Lin Chu feared for his own life and only wanted to know the first secrets of Jing Ying, nothing more. But he never thought Jing Ying would be so fierce in that restaurant. It would be dangerous for him to get involved in a fight between two giants as he could be crushed in the middle. However, Shenmo had the pay-to-win advantage and could persuade him in any way. She offered a bank card containing 50 million in profits made by her group. Lin Chu could buy whatever he wanted, but he wasn't someone easily corrupted. He strongly wanted to refuse the offer, but money wasn't something he could easily give up. Shenmo asked what he wanted from her since money was useful. Lin Chu asked his wife to stop confusing him with Mr. Wei. After they got together, no one besides the maid looked at him without curse or disdain. It was a controversial situation for both sides. It was worse for Lin Chu because he was always beaten by his wife's spiritual power. Shenmo apologized for letting her husband be demeaned in her presence. She would find a way to get her husband's forgiveness and do anything until she succeeded. In the company, she was working with her trusted employee, but this made her not want to know about business, due to the fact that she only wanted to know how to convince her husband to have more confidence in her. The girl suggested an obvious option, but Shenmo wanted methods that were not more direct or obvious. She only wanted Lin Chu to know how guilty she felt for the situation involving him. The girl would help but needed to know a bit more about their relationship. It was mentioned if Shenmo had humiliated him in any way. She revealed that she made him a housekeeper. It was a terrible strategy but good idea at the time, so she didn't blame herself much. Shenmo should abandon her identity as the eldest daughter of the Shen family if she wanted to convince her husband. Back home, she was changed and in a new form. She looked like Xiao, but wasn't her. It was Shenmo doing her cosplay. Shenmo's identity was abandoned and her plan to gain her husband's trust began. She was a new person and even her hair was in a different style. Lin Chu's spiritual power activated to the maximum, showing that Shenmo's way of convincing her husband was working very well. At first, the young man was scared because Shenmo was wearing Xiao's clothes, but it wasn't the maid there. It was just his wife willing to meet his needs. Shenmo made a strange choice to receive him. She gave up her Shen family identity. Even so, it was clearly Shenmo behind the outfit. Lin Chu doubted the veracity of the situation. He wasn't cooperating with the situation and everything the woman was doing was for him. She wouldn't be interested in being in that form of her own free will, so by free and spontaneous pressure, it was different. Lin Chu was unhappy about being put in household chores and always mocked in the position. The wife would apologize in her own way and was extremely hurt by the guilt on her shoulders. She set her pride aside to make her husband happy, but he wasn't cooperating at all. However, Lin Chu understood the situation and wasn't a fool, so he asked for help at least with his shoulders. It would just be a massage, so it was an easy situation to resolve. But he delivered a blow to throw her onto the bed and used his powers to invoke the memory of an actor. It would be a long and exhausting task for both, but it would restore their relationship to normal. Back at work, Lin Chu was out of energy and had difficulty even typing. He had hacked Lin Chu's phone but was having trouble finding the person he wanted. In the middle of the room, he asked if his partner could help by contacting people in Tokyo. The support would assist him in his hometown. As long as Lin Chu cooperated with her in dual cultivation, her demand wouldn't be a problem. Every time she brought someone, there would be a moment of practice. Lin Chu had written a book, so Xiaohu came with the news of the feedback he was getting. Using the name Wei, it was easy to reach a huge audience. He could hold press conferences and get closer to the mainstream media more and more. Another person entered the place, an envoy of Lin Chu. He needed the person to set up a store abroad to expand his business as an individual. It was important for the envoy to act based on the content of the book. To improve the situation, Lin Chu activated his business master's memory. The operation to take down Jing was beginning. Within 3 months, Lin Chu aimed to eliminate the entire Jing family from the region. At the Longcheng Hotel, the maid's brother came looking for Xiao Hui because he was in trouble. She immediately thought it was financial problems. The problem was that she had already given a decent amount of money for her brother to solve the situation. He had accumulated a debt of 2 million, and the initial 200,000 would not be enough to pay it off. He gambled again, leaving his sister extremely irritated. The problem wasn't the money, but another activity of her brother. A small favor was to be done for the creditor, which would be a big problem for Xiao Hui. The creditor was Jin, which complicated the maid's situation even more. Xiao Hui simply refused to cooperate, but her brother was being held hostage. She couldn't just leave. If she left, dangerous things could happen to her brother. So she sat down at the table and started the conversation Jin wanted to have with her. The first question was why Lin Chu had demonstrated such great spiritual power the day before. He was just an ordinary person who suddenly manifested a power spike. He couldn't give explanations because that would dishonor her master. Jing Yang's request was simple. He wanted Lin Chu to be drugged with a pill. Although it was easy for Xiao Hu to do, it would be extremely problematic. She categorically refused, but her brother was being held hostage. To keep her family safe, she asked for information about the pill's toxicity and how she would know if it was really put in the food. The pill wouldn't kill Lin Chu immediately, but Jing Yang would know when he took it. The problem was that in Jing Yang's eyes, Lin Chu wasn't considered a person. Back at the Shen residence, the maid knocked on the couple's door. They were lying down and let her in with some snacks she had prepared. She also mentioned that she had personal problems in her hometown and would be absent for a while. While thinking to herself who would take care of Miss Shen during her absence, Lin Chu noticed that something was wrong with the maid who wasn't acting as usual. He reflected on the pill and its real effectiveness because it could kill his master. The situation was a dilemma. If she didn't put the pill in the food, her brother could die without warning. It was a delicate situation. She couldn't let her brother die, but she also couldn't kill Lin Chu. If someone had to face this problem, it would be her. In her indecision, she considered taking the pill herself. To her surprise, Lin Chu appeared and took the pill from her, activating his toxin master ability. Lin Chu was extremely cunning in swallowing the pill, pretending to be poisoned and dramatizing the situation. But this act worried Xiao Hui, who ran to help him. If her master died in that residence, it could be a big problem. At the Jing residence, the head of the house was informed that Lin Chu had died, leaving the Shen family in confusion. It was a surprise to the two in the room who doubted if Lin Chu had really died. He thanked the maid for helping execute his plan successfully. If he had known she was so efficient, he would have trusted her from the start. Lin Chu's funeral was scheduled and everyone was present to see his coffin. Although Jing Yang was internally happy about the event, a voice came from under the coffin, making everyone jump in fright. In his mind, a corpse shouldn't rise or even speak. 3 days earlier in Xiao Hui's room, she was desperate about the possible death of her master and would do anything to prevent him from dying or becoming a zombie. Without mystery, Lin Chu had not died and just asked her to prepare more delicious snacks in the future. He was alive even after taking a potentially toxic pill strong enough to bring down an elephant. Thanks to his memory as a master of toxins, he always carried an antidote for poisons in his pocket. His preparation was made after noticing that the maid was very worried. Joking about such a serious situation made Xiao Hai angry enough to give him a light slap. He felt flattered by his maid's loyalty. Apart from not being able to kill him, there had to be another reason for her to use the poison. It was revealed that Jing Yang had kidnapped her brother and would kill him without hesitation. If she didn't kill her master, her brother could be done for. Knowing the enemy, Lin Chu informed her that even if she had killed him, Xiao Hui's brother wouldn't be safe. But she didn't know what to do from that point. She had no options in her mind. Lin Chu informed her that he could help and that any other doubts would be resolved by him. Xiao Hui shouldn't just run and be desperate because a confusing situation could be resolved. Jing Yang wouldn't let her brother go unless he received news that Lin Chu had indeed died. He staged a fake death so her brother could be released safely. Then he would accept the fake death and risk this plan. But he needed the Shen family to be on his side because they would be the ones to announce his death. He would have his wife's support in this case, and Xiao Hui was extremely grateful to her master. However, he needed to think of something more to get the Shen family to support his plan. He personally went to the Shen family residence to talk about his plans. There would be several barriers to his request because it was a request for a maid. So he had to activate his strategist memories to better handle the situation. It wasn't just for his maid, but a way to track Jing Yang's moles. He recalled the moles that were occurring within the family. The only way to end the moles was to eliminate their source. Jing Yang was surrounded by people, and the only way to catch him would be at an opportune moment at Lin Chu's funeral. He wanted the Shen family's help to set up the ambush, and after capturing him, it would probably be possible to catch all the traitors. If the 4 guardians were sent, dealing with Jing Yang wouldn't be a problem, but there was no need to call the 4 guardians. Only Guardian Simon would be enough to deal with the moles, but the final decision would be Shen Mo's. She would support her husband, so she said it would be beneficial for the family. The Shen family agreed to the plans and would follow Lin Chu's wishes. It was informed that his core was restored and would be perfect to ambush Lin Chu. Thus, the Cauldron project was back on the table. Back at the base, Xiao Hui's brother asked for money again. The kid was a vagabonding machine but wanted to make up for the money he lost in the past. Who was in the room now was Wei. He questioned why her brother was there, informing that Jing Yang had left him there because of the funeral issue and he was there just to ask for more money to try gambling. He was so bold that he even questioned why the two were so close. He informed that it was Wei who saved him. His face changed immediately, recalling that he also gave 200,000 to save him. He was already bringing him into the family. Xiao Hui's brother was addicted to gambling, so he couldn't help himself much. It was the same look he had from a memory of his own gambling. He could make 9 bets and win them all, but it could still lead to dissatisfaction and a worse future. This time, he would have to start from scratch because he had already brought enough chaos to the family. Xiao Hui was pushed by her brother while Wei managed to catch her in time. He could only help her brother leave the gambling addiction behind. Wei would send the money to her brother anyway, but there would be a huge condition. He would have to prove determination to both of them. As long as money was involved, the young man would do anything, which is dangerous. The test would be conducted in the Shen family cinema on an isolated stage. He only had to watch a movie for 24 hours and would earn money. However, it wouldn't be just watching a movie as he would have to sit in a special chair. He didn't think if it would be dangerous to sit in the chair, but it could just be a little uncomfortable. For the money, he went to do everything, but the chair closed and trapped him. It was a rehabilitation method known only by Wei. It would force Xiao Hui's brother's eyes open. They were showing movies about gambling and its dangers. Immediately, the young man was in shock, and his eyes started to turn red. Halfway through, her brother was already refusing the proposal and wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. The movie was actually a deep web documentary designed exclusively for gamblers. He would be left there for a few more hours until he became a different person. Lin Chu received thanks from Xiao Hui for the things Wei had done for her family. Su Wan entered the conversation between the two through the window, informing them that she had already sent one of her aides from Tokyo to a designated location. They would train spiritual power to become stronger. It would be a different kind of cultivation as they would cultivate as a trio. This time it was different for Lin Chu. He realized that with more people cultivating, the power result was significantly greater. Last time he was exhausted, unable to walk anymore. He managed to have his energy revitalized. Spiritual energy was flowing through his color. His color was getting purer. As the number of people he practiced would increase, his power strengthened. In other words, his power would increase as more people entered his path. At that rate, he might be able to rival Jing in the future. He would go out to find some thieves to test his current strength. The next day, he woke up and immediately activated his inventor memory, but he wasn't actually sleeping. He had been awake since the night before making devices. It was a secret what he was doing, but what worried him was the current state of the maid's brother. Suddenly, Lin Chu jumped on his back and asked how he was finding the current situation. He definitely wouldn't gamble again as he was traumatized. His suffering was over at least. After surviving the 24 hours, Xiao Hui's brother might hate the loan sharks even more. Wayne wanted to know more about the loan sharks responsible for all the problems that were happening. In the Jing family group, inside an office, several people were talking. Their piece ended with a kick to the door that flew open. These were the loan sharks Wei had been looking for all along. It was an unexpected and dangerous visit, as there might be confusion upon entering the Jing family's territory. Immediately, the information about the power that both were capable of possessing was contested. With no time to lose, the fight was about to begin. Wei was at a numerical disadvantage, but his memory power could be much more useful. He put the Toxin Master to play and threw a gas bomb in the place. He didn't even have to deliver his blows, he simply walked calmly through the room, striking anyone who crossed his path. It was a low move, but even lower were the vast numbers versus just one person. Wei had no pity for those shameful people who simply fell at his feet. One of the last henchmen was grabbed by the scruff of the neck by Wei, and soon after there was a pile of crushed bodies in the place. However, the Jing family was strong and had more men in the place. Besides the henchmen, it was time for the final boss to fight against Wei. It would be quite a challenge for the young man as he was now testing his new power. Wei received a powerful blow from his enemy and reflected on their level of spiritual power. Their spiritual powers were equal, but the enemy's attack speed was a bit higher. Wei's body couldn't keep up with those blows, much less predict them. Lin Shu was not completely alone as he was accompanied by his two partners. They wouldn't intervene because he should improve in combat. If they were really worried about him, they should let him handle the fight. Obviously, Lin Shu wouldn't be easily defeated, even with many problems. A blow was delivered and Wei held the hand of the Jing family member for a while. Lin Shu realized that his greatest weakness in that combat was his action speed. Fortunately, he had already noticed and prepared in advance. He could use the pay-to-win method with technology and win the fight more easily. Activating his secret, his opponent tried to grab him, but his speed was simply terrifying. His opponent was trying to catch him all over the room but couldn't as he was much faster. The inventor memory worked well at that moment. He could use other memories to help himself, so he used the fighter memory. Delivering a blow to the opponent's chin, he managed to end the fight by throwing him to the ground. After seeing their boss simply defeated, no one else wanted to fight in the place. However, no one would leave without at least a slap on the back. The two women didn't expect him to have that equipment. It was time to move up another floor or enter another boss room. The maid was concerned if he had any injuries on his face or body. Due to her doubts, he managed to break through the barrier. His golden core was successfully getting stronger. He wanted to practice more in the future and master the nascent soul domain. It would be strange for the maid, and she wouldn't follow the master's wishes. At that moment, only Wei could walk the streets calmly. Lin Shu was still in heaven. His funeral would happen soon. He was extremely tired from the ongoing plans and wanted to practice his aura. However, this time Xiao wouldn't join them, which would be a problem. Given her disappearance, it wouldn't be a good idea to train a lot because Shenmo would also miss him. He would do it another time because he also feared what his body would become if he practiced frequently. He was worried about where his wife was at that moment. He never lied about being anxious to see her. However, once again, his plans were halted. The president was on top of a tree observing him with her two partners. The question was how she knew that Lin Shu lived there. She simply had someone investigate the Shen family and found out where Lin Shu lived. It was a request for Lin Shu to go with her to the Society of Prodigies and start the addiction test. Lin Shu's bodyguard noticed the incident and came to protect him. The president knew the importance of the man for her religion, so she wouldn't let him escape for anyone. When she fired an aura shot, it was noticed that she was in the nascent spiritual soul domain, a power that Lin Shu hadn't reached yet. Given the training they were having, Su Wan wanted to test her new strength at that moment. There would be a fight, and Lin Shu just took advantage of the situation, staying stunned. Armed with her goddess's power, the president's hair turned white, and she became more powerful. Not even Su Wan's katana could pierce the barrier, and using less than 1% of the goddess's power, the president handled the situation. Her Chinese Super Saiyan form managed to increase her power significantly. She seemed like a new person, but only the hair color and power had changed. Back at the Society of Prodigies, Lin Shu questioned the initiation ceremony. The initiation ceremony was actually already happening. It was just a matter of time to be concluded. Given her religion, the president wanted to marry Lin Shu, but he was a married man. She also wanted Lin Shu to be her private property and no one else's. Lin Shu was a man of values, so he simply wouldn't let himself be persuaded in that situation. He wasn't a scoundrel. He just thought that each person should have a part of him to help. If necessary, the president would put Lin Shu in a vegetative state to protect him. He realized the situation and made a request that, in exchange, he would stay with the president at least that night. It would be interesting to use the president's power to resolve Lin Shu's situation. Lin Shu informed her that in 2 days, the Jing family would hold a funeral, and he would need her help to capture the villain. As long as she had divine power, no one could stop her. The deal was sealed, and she would let him leave the house the next day because the night was long. The president asked if it was there that he had kissed her goddess in the past. She wanted a piece of young Lin Shu. She also asked if there was something naturally extraordinary. Although Lin Shu liked the situation, he saw no benefit in it and didn't want to get involved with her. The problem was that with his current power, he couldn't fight her. Since he couldn't push her away, he had to play dirty again. Soon he pushed her to the other side, leaving her momentarily disoriented. He just wanted to throw a pill into the girl's mouth. He managed to drug her, but for good reason. He let her sleep and left as quickly as possible to escape his suffering. He returned to the Jing family residence. He would meet her again when he fought against Jing Ying. His wife was also worried about him, who threw him against the wall, asking why he was taking so long. To make matters worse, she was waiting for him in a Japanese uniform. It was a look that Su Wan used in her routine. Without wasting time, she asked where he was and if he had done something with other women. Obviously, he wouldn't lie about everything, even if something more than expected had happened. He asked if she wanted to misunderstand him again given the hotel incident years ago. She just wanted to know what he was really doing. Fortunately for Lin Shu, the president's subordinate appeared. He informed that Lin Chu had no women chasing after him, even though she didn't realize he had at least 2 women following him all day. There was nothing for her to worry about. Lin Chu was just making preparations for the funeral in the mourning hall. The Shen family was already gathered with their best warriors to combat Jin Wen. The person behind the family head was the chief of the 4 guardians of the Shen family. He was a first-class cultivator with an extremely rare physique. He was twice the size of a normal person, and his spiritual power was many times greater. When Jingying arrived, Lin Chu should stay inside the coffin until the ceremony ended. Thus, the guardian alone could get rid of the villain as quickly as possible. The president's subordinate asked Lin Chu to help as well. He also currently had spiritual power. To sum up, the chief guardian said Lin Chu was scum compared to his combat power. No one would contradict him, and perhaps he could fight alone. However, Lin Chu asked if he could take a punch from him to prove his power. If he were at the maximum of core formation domain, he wouldn't be able to pass the spiritual defense of the chief. It would be the perfect opportunity for him to demonstrate the power of his trio after practicing spiritual power. His 2 partners put their hands on his back and buffed him for a moment. Lin Chu delivered a strike more than sufficient to break the barrier. The blow emitted smoke from the guardian's bald head. He even swore it was a sneaky attack and wanted to settle the score. However, the family leader ended that pointless fight because they were fighting the enemy. There was a doubt from Shenmo because everyone knew her husband had spiritual power except her. It was an important matter, but the funeral awaited him. Jingying came with all his henchmen to the young man's funeral. At the reception, it was informed that only Jingying could pass as he was an honored guest, and only VIP guests could pass. He accepted without problems because no dead could rise from the dead. His eyes focused on Shenmo, who was dressed as a widow. The Shen family's performance was of the highest quality. Jingying was also an Oscar-worthy actor because he was honoring Lin Chu, but inside he wished he never returned. Lin Chu, inside the coffin, just started talking and scared Jingying. Immediately, he looked at the Shen family to see if he was going crazy or not. Maybe it was just him going crazy because the dead are dead. Lin Chu continued talking inside the coffin and asked Jingying to join him. More questions were posed and Lin Chu wanted him to answer, but obviously Jingying wouldn't play along. Those words from the dead were codes not for Jingying, but for the Shen family to deal with the mess. The guardian charged. The plan began, and it was asked that all of Jingying's henchmen be captured by the family. They were shocked due to the henchmen not having control of the situation. Meanwhile, in the fight between the guardian and Jingying, he survived the charge, and more blows were exchanged. The president was also on site and didn't see much reason to act in the fight. The chief guardian could handle Jingying on his own. In her view, he had several times his spiritual power, so it would be impossible for him to lose, unless he had an ace up his sleeve like spiritual suction. Jingying grabbed the guardian by the neck and started sucking his spiritual power into himself. It was an impressive technique and a unique art of the Southeast. Practitioners were required to immerse themselves in a toxic liquid remedy for an hour every day until they learned to use the skill. Despite the training, it could only be used 3 times in a person's life. Due to its limited use, it shouldn't be used more frequently. A stolen technique because it didn't matter the opponent's level of spiritual power. He could grab it and win the fight because of the power. It was a power capable of sucking all the spiritual power from his opponent. For the president, it wouldn't be a problem if she used that power to suck all the guardian's power. Her subordinate asked her to be more cautious as it could cause problems. After sucking the chief guardian, the man was even without glasses or a shirt. His energy changed to a new glow, and it could be a new form of cultivation. He would be able to leave the nascent soul domain and enter the outgoing domain. Given the situation, his spiritual power must have increased by at least 7 times. The compliment made the president angry enough to break her lollipop. She told him to trust in her abilities, saying she was the strongest president on the planet. Lin Chu activated his cultivator memory and asked her to be a bit more cautious. But she just activated the power of her spiritual goddess and transformed to fight against Jing. A cultivator in the outgoing domain could spend a period of 3 minutes within their soul beyond the opening form, so it wouldn't be advantageous to attack at the moment. Even with her immense power, the president took a hit from Jing that made her vomit. It was a problem because she even lost her white hair form and was back to her normal state. Until she returned to her normal form, there wasn't much they could do, so they had to wait for the minutes to pass. The Shen family was busy capturing the henchmen, but Shenmo was extremely worried about her husband's situation. Su-Won was ready to protect her master with her katana and her new spiritual power. The problem was that she wasn't capable against Jingying before, and now with his buff spiritual power, it would be even easier to defeat her. She might not be able to defeat Jingying, so Lin Chu would be the last line of defense. The president said he could use the spiritual energy of her goddess if he learned the necessary incantation. The woman offered to help him inside the coffin, as it would be a hidden technique. The two embraced and a blue aura began to flow through Lin Chu's body. He had doubts about what was happening because he even left his body and traveled as a spirit. They went to the presence of the goddess Rainier. She had warned beforehand that she should not go to her temple without being called. But given the situation, she had to go to the goddess's presence because she would be in danger if she didn't. She would accept any punishment the goddess wanted to give her. Lin Shu was surprised that the president's name was actually Runya. It was the name of a very recognized family in the world. She explained that they were attacked by Jing, who entered an outgoing domain state, but she needed to pass the goddess's technique to Lin Shu to defend against Jing. The problem was she remembered who the man was, but Lin Shu didn't remember the contrary. She was impatient and wanted to help immediately. They wanted to do dual cultivation as quickly as possible. Lin Shu obviously refused because a kiss from the woman had put him in a coma for a month. 10,000 memories were implanted in his mind. And since he wasn't stupid, he wanted to know if he really was in the past. The young man had 10,000 memories inside him, so he needed a call for them to make sense, and one of them to make the most sense. The goddess had an object in her mouth and would give it to Lin Shu to remember. The object would be useful for recalling an individual memory and isolating some power. It would also be a basic requirement for Lin Shu to use the goddess's power. He should take his name after using the object. In the living world, Su Wan was fighting bravely against Jing, but she was losing strength at that moment. Jing Ying asked how many times he had to warn her that the girl was not a problem for him. She might just be desperate to not let her master die, but he would eliminate him anyway. He tried to deflect a blow to Lin Shu, but the fight was still against Su. The villain began to get irritated with the girl and diverted an attack at her. The goddess said Lin Shu was truly important to the president because she sacrificed a lot to bring him there. The problem for the young man was that he needed to know the name of one of his souls, but there were 10,000 souls, and he didn't know the name of any of them specifically. He just needed to remember the name of his past soul, and then he would have the goddess's power. Jing Ying even mocked him being in a coffin and wanted to turn the fake funeral into a real one. Shen Mo and her friend entered the place and wanted to fight, but it wouldn't help much. Lin Shu was on another level of power, and anyone would have problems facing him. The only one who'd help a bit was Shou Hui, who carried the coffin away from Jing Ying. Until the man could get up, she would protect him. The maid managed to stop Jing Ying's blow for a moment, but would have trouble continuing the defense. He was surprised because he didn't know she had such power and speed. Moments before, she asked for help with a technique to increase her speed. It was the wind speed technique that could increase anyone's speed. Shou Hui wanted to use the technique to distract Jing Ying or to improve the Shen family's situation at that moment. It wouldn't be a problem for Ranya's subordinate to use it, so he just struck a blow. The technique lasted only 15 minutes. She was at her limit, so she just placed the coffin in the farthest place she could reach. Jing Ying soon caught up with her and grabbed her by the neck. In the goddess's temple, Lin Shu was trying to remember his old name, but it was extremely difficult. He was starting to get lost in thought, wondering why all the people inside him were successful. Jing Ying questioned why the maid was so dedicated to protecting her master. She and everyone else didn't want her master to die, so she would do anything to protect him. However, the villain was in control of the situation and managed to open the coffin. It was time to end the situation, and he threw Shou Hui away. The president and Lin Shu were in the coffin and took a powerful blow from Jing Ying. Still in the spiritual realm, he was trying harder and harder to find Lin Shu's old name. The goddess recalled a past memory where she was cultivating power with Lin Shu's reincarnation. She only said it wasn't a type of tax he should pay forever. The goddess destroyed that spiritual soul of his forever. Lin Shu remembered why the other 9,999 souls were successful in their respective fields. It was because they were all descendants of such a strong ancestor. He revealed to the goddess that he had remembered his name and also the moments he spent with her. She immediately asked him to remember the name and put an end to the situation. She was his love in the past and also the only person close to him. He was a supreme immortal, an ancestor of many souls, also known as Wang Hun. Jing Ying was about to finish off Lin Shu and put an end to the Shen family's maid. But Su Wan arrived immediately to help her friend and managed to hold her. Shen Mo also came to help, but both couldn't do much against him. Everyone did everything they could up to that moment. Finally, Su Wan fought against Jing Ying, but this time she lost power more easily. Her nascent spiritual soul would never match an outgoing divine soul. He didn't want trouble with the girl. He would just let her live quietly at some point. He actually wanted to end Lin Shu. His problems weren't with the Shen family, but with the man who complicated his life. Shen Mo struck a blow at Jing Ying, but it didn't help much as he was extremely strong. She offered for him to return with the same power he had before to her family, but should leave Shu. Jing Ying didn't want power and didn't want money. He just wanted the girl with him. Obviously, Lin Shu wouldn't let his wife be taken, so he returned from the dead with new spiritual power. He gained new hair and a new aura that could rival Jing Ying or go beyond. It was time to test his new powers and put an end to the troubling villain. There was a joke in Jing Ying's eyes, who mocked the situation, but he only received a blow to the chest that threw him far away. He ended up on a rock and received slaps in the face from Lin Shu. Seeing the situation, he tried to escape with his devices, but Lin Shu didn't let him. Jing didn't want to die there, so he would reveal the moles in the Shen family. The villain gave a flash drive with evidence incriminating the Jing family, but in the future, he wanted a rematch with that opponent. It would be very useful for the Shen family to have that flash drive, but Lin Shu wouldn't let go of everything he had done so far. He struck a blow right in the middle of Jing Ying's chest. Lin Shu was lying to Jing Ying and had no deal regarding his integrity. He simply concentrated power and pointed at the adversary's face. He might be a powerful person, but he was not very pleasant in Lin Chu's eyes. Jing Yang, seeing the extent of the power, accepted his defeat. Better to accept defeat than lose his life. Lin Chu just left his defeated opponent. The Shen family was stunned by the young man's power. He simply thanked them for saving him while he was in the coffin. Although the entire Shen family was standing, some members outside it were unconscious or maybe worse. While Lin Chu was in his spiritual world with the goddess, Xiaohui simply protected him from all blows. Everyone in that fight sacrificed something to defeat Jing Yang. Lin Chu still had some of his power left, so he would use the rest of his spiritual soul to restore Xiaohui. The problem was that his spiritual power was only for combat and couldn't easily heal her. The only method that could save her, he knew very well, but it wasn't very conventional. Shen Mo didn't understand anything they were talking about. Lin Chu said that place was appropriate because he could use nature to his advantage. They would use the river water to restore Xiaohui's vital energy. They were attempting dual cultivation to restore the girl's energy. 5 people were available and could perform the cultivation. The 4 people were from the Shen family, and the other could be Rainier, who was unconscious. They all entered the water, which was pleasant due to the weather. It would be a cultivation that Lin Chu would greatly enjoy. He could also use his power to heal the rest of the people who were injured or exhausted. Shen Mo noted it was only because it was an urgent situation and she didn't want to lose her maid. She wanted to take the opportunity to learn what Lin Chu was hiding from her, such as why his power had suddenly increased. Obviously, Lin Chu hid his identity as Wei and just said he was practicing alone every day. Su Wan mentioned that practicing martial arts alone was part of it. Maybe Lin Chu didn't want to talk about this power due to fear of the Shen family or how they treated him. It was asked how Xiaohui knew this information, but it was simple. She talked to Xiaohui about everything. Shen Mo doubted her husband and how much he loved her. The genius just activated his death guru memory and managed to turn the situation around. At that moment, Rainier woke up from her sleep and saw that Lin Chu was with his wife. At the Shen family residence, the family patriarch was waiting for the couple. The defeat of Jing Yang was discussed even in the outgoing domain, all because of Lin Chu and all the help he received during the battle. The patriarch was surprised by how the fight developed and why the 2 people reached that power. The greater a person's potential strength, the more spiritual energy they could exert in the future. The family patriarch said that Lin Chu was good company for his daughter. He questioned why his other relative didn't train like his sister to create an invincible power. The problem was that he would speak well of Shen Mo because he was warning him about something he wasn't even at fault for. Lin Chu gave all the credit to his wife and downplayed his achievements since it would be better that way. It was time to take a break from the combat world to at least have dinner with the family. The Shen family gathered around a table surrounded by meat to discuss personal matters. Lin Chu was wary of eating the food because it was something he didn't know. In any case of betrayal or digestive problems, he had kept a pill in hand. He wanted to know what actions the Shen family patriarch wanted to take with him. He knew beforehand that he was plotting something but continued to eat the poisoned food anyway. A few more bites and Lin Chu collapsed face first into the plate. The Shen family patriarch asked to take him to a secret room, but Shen Mo intervened and asked what was going on. Lin Chu had no idea about the situation, but they were taking him to the lab department. Would he be a lab rat from that moment on, or was it just a beneficial plan for the family? Shen Mo was informed that they needed Lin Chu for all important plans from that moment on. But kidnapping her husband would be nothing beneficial, so Shen Mo activated her power and threatened to blow everything up. She managed to free her husband from the staff who were taking him to the lab. She saved her husband and further solidified her love for him. More Shen family henchmen entered to try to take Lin Chu to the lab. His wife wouldn't let him be captured. At that moment, Lin Chu was still awake and wanted to see how things would proceed. Her father informed her that the young man would be an effective weapon for the family, and that keeping him in the lab would be very beneficial. The problem was that Lin Chu would be trapped in the lab for the rest of his life. Everyone was interested in his new spiritual power, which could be the strongest in the world in the future. He might contain secrets that modernity didn't yet possess. Even though they could be strong, humans were still incapable of leaving the nascent spirit state. They didn't have Lin Chu's consent to extract his power. It was more than all that mattered was the Shen family's benefit as a whole, not just a conjugal relationship. It was decided that they should capture Lin Chu at any cost, but they shouldn't harm Shen Mo. The henchmen activated their aura, but Shen Mo was quicker and activated her power. Everyone scattered in her blue aura and was knocked out. The house turned into a missile of bodies. There was a master in the place with more power than the henchmen, so he shot Shen Mo from behind. The low blow was enough to make her fall to the ground. Lin Chu would act if necessary, but wanted to see if his wife could endure until the end. Shen Mo simply got up, her fury in another world. She was provoked and a bit weaker. She would concentrate her efforts on protecting Lin Chu. Although Shen Mo was strong, all those numbers could defeat her without difficulty. Fortunately, a window opened and an aura of speed flew in to save her along with her husband. It was Mr. Wei, which was a surprise even to Shen Mo. Elsewhere, other maids commented that a fight had occurred at the Shen family restaurant. It was dangerous to mention as it was Lin Chu fighting against Shenmo's father's henchman. Xiao Hui, who was lying down at that moment, also overheard the conversation. It could be dangerous for both Shenmo and Lin Chu if she didn't act. Part of her plan was to transform into Mr. Wei to combat the evil threatening her master. She asked for help to act. The fake Wei was at the restaurant at that moment and asked Shenmo to accompany him along with Lin Chu. It was mentioned that he was an important figure within the Shen family and could be useful as a reward. If they captured him alive, they could earn $1 billion because of the Jing family. There was a bounty on Wei's head, but he wouldn't be caught easily, even as a fake version. He activated his power and struck the ground, causing everything to collapse. He was at the peak of the formation stage, but even though he was strong, he couldn't rival someone in the spiritual nascent stage. However, Mr. Wei could use some technology to his advantage and equalize the powers. He grabbed a device and placed it in his hands. When he pressed the button, no explosion occurred. Only smoke filled the environment, perfect for escaping the location. It wasn't anything magical, just a smoke bomb. They escaped through the window, but would be followed for a while. The master on site wanted to go after them, but there was another bomb planted. The fake Wei planted 360 bombs and detonated them after he managed to leave the location. They went to hide in the Chumo Hotel, an unknown place until then. It wasn't an ordinary hotel, as it was Lin Chu's hotel, with staff who could be of help. He wasn't just a combat man, he could also handle business. He entered the presidential suite to protect his injured wife. Although she didn't have serious injuries, she needed to rest a bit until she woke up. Shenmo woke up, saw her husband alive and standing, and was startled. He joked about the situation, saying he was glad to see her well. Shenmo was concerned about what had happened to the people at the Shen family mansion. Lin Chu just informed her that she was safe because it was his territory. She had a fever and needed an injection or medicine. He had a syringe in hand. However, obviously, Shenmo didn't want to be injected immediately, so she refused the offer. He wouldn't betray his wife by injecting her. The problem was that he needed his wife, so he waited for the right moment to inject a beneficial drug into her arm. It hurt enough for her to bite Lin Chu's shoulder. The one actually feeling pain was him. The medical treatment was interrupted. Xiao Hai entered the room and talked about the food. Lin Chu said the food would be eaten later because Shenmo was still hurt and needed more sleep. Seeing the two, the maid was a bit upset. She liked Lin Chu and wanted him to go further. Surprisingly, Lin Chu took her hand and led her to a more important place. The girl asked why they were in her room. Lin Chu just wanted to put on a new outfit, but the action made Xiao Hui a bit uncomfortable. He wanted to put on night clothes for a nighttime operation. The two needed to be disguised as they were currently fugitives. The Shen family was focused on disarming the bombs. Xiao Hui and Lin Chu were disguised as ninjas waiting for the right moment to detonate the bomb. A button was pressed and bombs exploded everywhere, detonating the entire Shen family. It was the ideal moment for them to enter a secret location and see what was happening. They could take advantage of the chaotic situation of the Jin family. Going down the stairs, they were surprised. Other ninjas had arrived before them and were rescuing Jing Yang. Obviously, they couldn't return inside and had to disguise themselves as part of the group. They wanted to take charge of Jing Yang and managed to be alone with the villain. Jing Yang was smart enough and realized something was wrong. Without much trouble, Lin Chu removed his mask and revealed his face, unconcerned with the situation. The henchman came at him, but it was to no avail. They fled the scene and Su Wan appeared to help them make a perfect escape. She grabbed her katana and said that if they crossed a certain line, they would be finished. Before even entering the water, they could be cut down. Her cultivation base had become much stronger. After her practices, it was no problem to leave the Shen family grounds and return to the Chumo Hotel with Jing. He was tied to a chair and interrogated by Lin Chu's interrogator memory. He had to answer the questions truthfully or something bad could happen to him. Lin Chu immediately wanted to know if any medication could enhance his cultivation base. If the spiritual nascent state could be reached that way, it could be a problem and a crucial move for any family. Jing Yang was reluctant to continue talking but was forced to give some answers. He revealed that his cultivation method was secret and only a few people could use it. There was an immortal sect behind his power, and only he had knowledge of it. He managed to contact the group, but they were extremely rare to find. He got them to come to his natural habitat by making a deal. They went to his home and accepted him as a disciple to pass on their secret knowledge. Lin Chu asked why he wasn't teaching his teachings right then. Jing Yang informed him that it would be a problem to teach what he might manage to do. It was expected that only the immortal sect could do it. There were spies within the family and secret groups might be forming. The Jing family had a way to use spiritual power as energy. If they could use spiritual power as a new source of electrical energy, it could change all global relations, especially if Jing Yang got his hands on the power. He could be the most important man in the world. He simply wanted to combine technology with spiritual energy. Lin Chu used his memory to tinker with his phone and managed to create a powerful aura around himself. Then he confirmed that spiritual energy could be used as energy. The spiritual energy could indeed be used as a form of energy, and this information was a surprise for the villain. He was very doubtful of who the man in front of him really was. Lin Chu was just a person with the company of thousands of memories in his head. He returned to the presence of the maid and asked where Shenmo was. She was still sleeping, but dinner was already prepared at that moment. Xiaohui was much kinder and more careful with him from that moment on. He informed her that the key to Jing Yang's spiritual energy was the immortal sect. The table was bountiful, and Xiaohui was holding a piece of chicken thigh, but it was taken by someone else. Su Wan appeared at the table and immediately ate the meat. It was quite a surprise that the immortal sect really existed. Lin Chu informed that Jing Yang knew about the sect because he was in a secret place when he was younger. Su Wan felt strange recalling the name of the secret sect. Thanks to the immortal sect, Jing Yang managed to reach an absurd level of power. In exchange, they only asked that the Jing family surrender to them. The problem was that the young man didn't know where the immortals were located. There was also another enigma regarding their combat power. There was something to think about later because in the room, Lin Chu was preparing for the next day but was woken up by Su Wan. She wanted to tell Lin Chu a secret but didn't want to wait until tomorrow. She confirmed the existence of the immortal sect because she fled the place when she was a child. After her family died, members of the divine sect managed to capture her and made her their disciple. She started her career cultivating her spiritual energy and also learning as a ninja. The problem was that she was curious and discovered that her parents were killed by the same sect that accepted her. Seeing such a talented child with cultivation power, they simply killed her parents and she escaped. Lin Chu would definitely avenge her and bring chaos to the sect. They were talented, and it would be a problem to face them directly. Su Wan was almost reaching the outgoing domain state to bring some relief. If she remained in the spiritual nascent state, it would be a problem to face the assassins. The girl wanted Lin Chu to teach her how to leave her state and become stronger. Su Wan couldn't wait for Lin Chu to teach her new form of power, so they started training in the room. She managed to reach the outgoing domain. Lin Chu was shocked and asked how he had gotten into that situation. Due to the new stage, Su Wan left her body and reached her new power. At the same moment, Shen Mo woke up and asked if there was someone else with them. The protagonist improvised and threw his wife onto the bed. It was the perfect opportunity for the other woman to leave the room. After Su Wan left, she informed the staff not to let anyone else enter the room. The employee was left puzzled. In the Jing family, there was confusion. Ying's father was furious with his employees, blaming them for his son's absence. He had the option to contact the immortal sect, so he used his ticket to make a spiritual call. A sect member appeared, already complaining about being summoned without warning. There should have been a payment before making contact. But it was an urgent situation for the Jing family, so he stayed to hear the proposal. He saw that it would be difficult but would require an extra payment as the mission progressed. He flew over the city. He began analyzing thousands of people and millions. He entered each of their memories. Additionally, he could enter any place. Back at the hotel, they discussed their current resources. They had gathered enough resources for the operation to destroy the Jing family. Su Wan entered the room, announcing she was prepared to take down the mortal sect. It was also an important way to test how strong she had become with her new spiritual energy state. She was stronger and more confident. Lin Chu asked for help with his Wei costume because he would make an official media announcement revealing his appearance. Within the divine sect, a past memory was recalled. A young man had found the area he wanted to specialize in. He would be able to carry out his individual tracks within that function. He had cultivated for 20 years in the mountains for that moment. On all televisions and virtual billboards, Mr. Wei was going to make an announcement. He began by saying he was the author of successful books and had an important announcement. He was a quality novelist who surprised everyone with the information. People remembered reading Mr. Wei. He also informed that he used spiritual energy and warned that it was immense power, but not everyone could use it, or was a lie. Using his spiritual energy, he activated his orator memory. He mentioned crucial information that everyone was being deceived at that moment. In the body of a girl, the divine sect member wondered who the man he saw was. Mr. Wei stated that it was a practice everyone had the capacity to learn. He said that within his work, there were methods to learn spiritual energy that could change people's lives. It was an insane move by Mr. Wei, as it could completely change who held power or not. He'd also revealed why spiritual energy was being hidden. It was because there were people and groups controlling the spiritual power, and he complained about the situation. Mr. Wei hoped people would join him, and together they could be an unstoppable force. He empowered people and established an even more powerful figure for himself. Lin Chu blamed the Jing family for keeping the information hidden even more. They censored the information about spiritual power that could change everyone's lives. He asked people if they would let the situation continue as it was. And he did his personal marketing, urging everyone to open his web novel to see how their lives could be changed. He managed to cause a feeling of repulsion and chaos. He informed people of the initial steps to gain spiritual power, and some were already able to use it. Ordinary people were coming off trains with auras and incredible speed. He imagined how great that revolution could be and how society could evolve. The divine sect member was surprised that there was a more formidable person than him in that world. He needed to get Mr. Wei before continuing his personal plans. Inside the Jing family residence, the father was furious and broke a table. The anger was because the sect member he had asked to resolve the situation was asleep and discovered the information too late. A person entered the room and informed them that they had found Mr. Wei's location and were ready to end him. If they captured him, they would earn $1 billion in cash. The city had 30 million people, and the information was a valuable resource. Some people loved Wei, and others hated him even more. Su-won appeared in the building, but she shouldn't have been there. It could be dangerous for her, but she affirmed that she could help given her new power. Lin Shu asked if she was worried about him, but she lied, saying she was worried about losing her training partner. She was also excited to demonstrate his current power and see how the goddess's power would help him. It wasn't just Su-won's power that improved in the spiritual training practice the previous night. Lin Shu would take the lead in the situation and be very quick. Warriors fell from the sky to fight Mr. Wei. All the richest families in the area were after him and demanded his head. Wealthy families like the Jing have always kept an eye on them and shielded them from information about spiritual power, so they didn't know about it. Besides profiting from their work, they tried to deceive them by saying that this power came from heaven. Now it was time to cultivate this power and become the true masters. People are angry about what these influential families have been doing all along. On the phone, there were instructions to cultivate spiritual power, focusing all the Kai in the elixir field. It doesn't take long for people to start experimenting on their own bodies with those tips. A man is happy because he also discovered that he has spiritual power. The train's chime announced they had arrived at the station and should prepare for disembarkation. The newly awakened people left with their new abilities. What was happening now was a widespread awakening in the city, something truly impressive. Even so, he doesn't want anyone in Longcheng to be more formidable than him. So he's going to stop spying on the girls for a while and go after this person. Reluctantly, he leaves because he enjoys being a degenerate who spies on people in the bath. At the Jing family headquarters, the outrage is unanimous after Wei's statement. For that was an affront, a gesture of war against the entire family and its members. The furious man wants them to quickly find out where this anonymous person is so he can confront him. One of the servants says he was spotted on the roof of the Longqing TV network. Then the boss tells the servants to go, and if they capture him, the 1 billion reward will be theirs. Two oddballs are happy with the news as they know they'll spend it all on gambling, women, and dubious pharmaceuticals. There's still someone on top of the roof. That widespread awakening will certainly help him in the future. A girl suddenly arrived at his location. With the statement, the others should be safe because he would now be the focus of people's attention. She knows she can be of great help as dangerous people are surely after him. Faced with this, he asked if she was caring too much about him. But she says no, that she just wouldn't want to lose someone who helped her so much in training. However, he still hasn't used the lending technique, so there's no one in that realm who can subdue him. Not to mention he needs to show a fraction of his power to these people so they can grasp the magnitude of his talent. And the last time they cultivated together, he became much stronger. The girl says she'll watch from afar and hopes everything goes well for him. Time passes for a few moments. In just a few minutes, some cultivators have arrived on the rooftop. They are facing Wei ready to fight. All the powerful families want him, and there's nowhere to run from that. With a mocking smile, he asked the fools why he wasn't too keen on running away. Now they're all exactly where he wanted them to be. At the Jing family headquarters, the boss is angrier than a loan shark getting stiffed. The fool who was spying on the women finally returned to his body. As soon as he realized the man had woken up, the boss reprimanded him because everyone had seen Wei's statement. But the energetic thug says this isn't about his son, as it's not just that family that was doing it. All the immortal sects are involved in this mess. That guy isn't just an enemy of this family. After what he did, he's an enemy of everyone in the hidden divine sect. And thanks to that, if there's one thing that guy must be now, it's deep in trouble. The day passes in the city with a beautiful sky. The fools are still on the rooftop. Wei's energy is overflowing, like a super being. Those who arrived are at the nascent soul stage, and since they're in inner formation, there's no chance of victory. But now in this situation, with all of them in the same place, the advantage is entirely his. Now the fools are wetting their pants with what they're seeing. Wei was simply too fast and passed by them like lightning. As soon as that happened, a bunch of fools went flying without knowing what hit them. Now only the oddballs remained, who were also enemies of fashion. One of them knows that if they engage in a fistfight, they'll get wrecked, but the other, with less discernment, still wants to settle out the fight. The brothers are cooperating to use their most formidable technique. Several clones appear on the rooftop. While that's happening, people continue watching everything on their phones. They're anxious because they think Wei is in danger. They must be Jing family thugs, and the man calls for people to go help Wei. On the streets, the crowd moves toward the building, ready to start a full-scale brawl. The shirtless man has just arrived at the scene where the fight is about to break out. He thought Wei might flee, but seeing this, he realizes he won't even need to do anything. That cloning technique is good, and he himself has a hard time overcoming it. Wei performs his spell with his hands. The shirtless man noticed that it's at the level of the immortal realm. It didn't take long for Wei to capture the fashion enemies with his hands. What he was showing them was power, raw power. Tricks like theirs wouldn't even fool a child, let alone someone as strong as him. With a fool in each hand, he began spinning them rapidly, just to see what would happen to them. Watching all of this, the shirtless man knows he's a level below and couldn't do anything either. Maybe only his master could. One of the twins cries out desperately for his mother. The other can't believe how fast they're spinning. After spinning for a long time, they were thrown off the roof. As they fall, one of them panics because now his baldness is exposed. That was Y's way of dealing with troublemakers. Only now did he notice the presence of the shirtless man. He could only use that lending technique for half an hour, and he's already near his limit, knowing that a fight could go badly. The shirtless man thinks the same. If they fight, he imagines he'd come out worse. So he looks at him with a face that says he's really tough, like a bluff. Wei, who is also a bind, bluffs in the same way. But in their minds, both want to avoid conflict as much as possible. The two, extremely cautious, continue staring at each other. Wei has no idea why the shirtless man hasn't attacked him yet. Meanwhile, the shirtless man is paranoid, thinking he's about to be attacked. Using an ability, he noticed the sweat on his opponent's forehead and began wondering if he was also afraid. Then he realized that Wei must have seen his previous punches and is probably scared to the bone. So Wei said he's waiting for a move from him, as he won't attack unless provoked. This relieved the shirtless man, who realized he could leave without getting beaten up, introduced himself to Wei, and asked where he got that immortal realm technique. Faced with this, Wei realized he could exploit this opportunity, making the shirtless man believe that Wei is far superior to him. Now Wei asks who said he was only in the immortal realm. This simple statement made the shirtless man sweat so much that it's now understandable why he doesn't wear shirts. If Wei is in the forging realm, only his master could handle him. He quickly turned his back, thinking that young ones shouldn't meddle with elders. To Wei's relief, as in his current condition, he wouldn't be able to win at all. As the shirtless man leaves, several people arrive, saying they were there to help him. They saw everything on the internet and are willing to beat up this guy just to make Wei smile. Because what those families are doing is dishonest, and their true enemy is the people. This noisy and untimely appearance left both of them annoyed. The crowd's leader rallied the masses to cheer for Wei. Then they began shouting, ready to fight. Now it seems like Wei needs to fight, but he doesn't know what to do. And the shirtless man can't run away now, as it would disgrace the divine secret sect. Since things have reached this point, he hopes not to offend Wei. Faced with his power, the crowd realized this was no ordinary fight. Now Wei realized that the shirtless man is quite strong. He speaks to his wife as he's about to be beaten so badly he might end up playing for Vasco. The shirtless man is already in the air, ready to deliver the first blow. Wei immediately assumes a defensive stance. In the shirtless man's mind, he can only imagine the beating he's about to receive for free. He's imagining that Wei's power is so immense that he feels no fluctuation at all. His strike is getting closer to landing. Wei extends his hand, forming a vortex of energy that extends into a blast. All that's left on the ground are the ashes of someone who doesn't wear a shirt. That's what ran through his mind as he needs to do whatever it takes to survive. Desperately, he hit himself with his own hand. As a result, he was flung away as if he'd been struck by Wei. The crowd tries to understand what happened. As to them, Wei is so powerful that his movements couldn't be seen. Now he says he didn't see anything and wants to know if the battle is already over. He doesn't understand how his opponent was defeated without him doing anything. He tells Wei he admits defeat because it was Wei who showed him that victory would be impossible. But things weren't over, as the divine secret sect would continue hunting him anyway. The crowd gossiped as they didn't know about the existence of this sect, much less that Wei was so powerful. After saying goodbye, the shirtless man quickly made his exit. He had finally left, much to Wei's relief. Now the crowd is all prostrated as they want to become his disciples. It's a strange request since they don't know him and know nothing about him, yet they want him as their teacher. But they are grateful for teaching them how to awaken. Besides, he's powerful enough to repel someone from the divine secret sect. Since they awaken in such a short time, they might be of great help in the future, so he accepted them as disciples. After that, he began to take something out of his coat pocket. He shared a magical weapon with them. Through it, he would share cultivation techniques with them, so they should keep it safe. In each of their hands, a mysterious phone appeared. One of them wants to know the name of their sect. Wei proudly says they are the 10,000 Souls sect. On Longyan Mountain, something is happening. A woman is cultivating on the water. She is Yun, leader of the divine secret sect. Footsteps approach her location. It's the shirtless man, who Miling addresses her respectfully. The chief wants to know if the Longqing problem has been resolved, but he says he was defeated by a man named Wei and wants someone to show his memories to her so she'll understand everything. Curious, she wants to know what realm he's in to have defeated him. Probably in the forging realm, just like she is. As soon as she heard that, she began to move, for she couldn't believe that someone so powerful existed in that city. But the shirtless man said it was Wei himself who claimed to be above the immortal level. Upon hearing that, she says she understands everything and tells her disciple to leave. For a moment, he covered his face with the rising steam. And indeed, he left the presence of his chief. It seems she was quite happy to learn this, because if he is truly a strong man, she would be fully willing to cooperate with him. That way, she could overcome the tribulation she's going through. While taking her bath, she happily and excitedly imagines the endless possibilities. A man with a microphone in hand is delivering the news. In yesterday's mysterious broadcast, Wei revealed to everyone how spiritual awakening works. Even so, the Jing family launched an attack against him almost immediately, but Wei managed to fend off all his aggressors. After sharing the truth, Wei is the true hero of that city. People want to boycott the Jingxi group for deceiving them. After that statement, the family's reputation was being destroyed. Now the group is facing resistance in various negotiations, and the money is starting to dry up. The boss wants to know if they have any solutions to this complicated situation. Only if other companies help them, but they certainly don't want to get involved in this. Faced with this, their only hope is an emerging business group. The boss is happier and wants to know what company that would be, to which the employee says it's the Chumo Group. Weird name, he thinks, seems to have no meaning. Meanwhile, at the Chumo Hotel, things are wonderful. Wei is getting shoulder massages comfortably. An employee says the boss needs to follow his own instructions, as they're not stopping their growth. They're only behind the top 4 in the city. This is definitely good news to hear. Wei held the woman's hand affectionately. Because you would like to ask her a favor. Wei says she'll do anything except that. Upon hearing this, he'll take those words as a promise from her. Looking at the employee, he told him to settle the company's accounts as well as the manual he wrote. From now on, the girl would be the CEO of the company. In the presidential suite, the window offers a view of the sky. He sleeps comfortably in the company of a lovely woman. Beside the bed, there is another woman. He slowly begins to wake up because he felt something happening. The girl's knees resting on the bed. Even his sleeping face is beautiful, as he was chosen by the gods. But Wei didn't like being woken up. He just wanted to rest peacefully, but people keep disturbing him. Now the lovely woman is jealous because he mentioned people in the plural. So he told her to be quiet, as there's another woman still there. Once morning comes, they'll talk. But the blonde wants Shenmo to see her man being stolen. Now the brunette is awake too. Wei is desperate and says he has nothing to do with this woman. However, the brunette seems to be quite calm about everything. She says that Wei belongs to the gods and cannot be hers alone. This is not a normal reaction, and he imagines something has happened to Shenmo. Now the blonde fiercely advances on him. With her abilities, Wei is completely defenseless. On top of him, she asked if the boy had heard that, because tonight he belongs entirely to her. To him, the blonde must have used some technique on Shenmo, and that's something he wouldn't tolerate. But she says she didn't use anything and that Shenmo's permission came naturally. And since Shenmo made no resistance, he shouldn't resist anymore either. It was time for him to embrace this opportunity, but to him, none of this felt right. He tries to break free from her, terrified of that technique. However, the blonde is persistent and wrapped her legs around him. He shouldn't be afraid, as she used a technique that made her enter his dreams. And with that, she could control everything in his dreams. If that wasn't enough, she could place more women there with just a snap of her fingers. Things in the room began to disappear. But if she did that, they wouldn't participate in anything, as she wants his total exclusivity. Even so, he doesn't want any of this and gets straight to the point, as she came here with a purpose. She found his actions in the city days ago inspiring, but he shouldn't use that ability in front of others, as it could lead to her being discovered. He didn't know the Divine Secret Gate knew people like her, but they do. Now he should go to the goddess's church in the morning, where she would explain everything in detail. At the goddess's church, he arrived as soon as dawn broke. The blonde pulled a book from the shelf. A passage opened, and she said that every city has a cultivation site for the sex. This city has only 2. And the transcendental schools have 2 functions: to hide the existence of spiritual power and to control violent acts from the awakened. That's why they recovered and managed to hide so well. Behind this is the effort of every cultivation school. Now Wei used his image to make all of this come to light. As a consequence, people would take action to eliminate him and make everything hidden again. He's in big trouble, but she can make him flee and stay with her in Dubai for a few years until things calm down. If that's what he wants, of course. But he has unfinished business in the city and knows that the people from the Divine Secret Gate are not his enemies once he transforms. She doesn't seem too happy about this. The leader of the Shenyan sect is at the catastrophe level and is almost immortal. Wei wants to know what she's still lacking. She needs to find someone at the same level, given her cultivation. Only then will she be able to overcome this calamity. And for 10 years, the sect has been looking for someone suitable for this. Indeed, it's a bit difficult to find someone with that much potential. Now the efforts of the Shen family to capture him make sense. But if that's the case, he has an idea. He should go there under the guise of a teacher. The most dangerous place might be the safest for him. The blonde wants to know if he intends to be the powerful woman's partner then. But he told her to shut up. What he wants is to learn spiritual techniques from her, because he loves learning new things. Even if that's his intention, he doesn't even know where this sect is located. What worries her now is that the people at the hidden gate are at risk of losing their lives. But he asks her not to worry because he knows what to do this time. Those who don't want to die must die first. In front of a building, the shirtless man is with some thugs, and they should enter with him. They should ask the president of Kirin Hui where Wei is at any cost. And before he could say what they should do to anyone who tries to stop them, a guard appeared. It didn't take long for him to use his technique and send the poor man into the wonderful world of dreams, where he became a memory. But it was Wei himself who did it, knocking the guard down. After doing so, he turned his back and kept walking. The guard is sitting on the ground, alive, and the thug says Wei had stolen her job. Now they decided to quietly follow him to see what he would do. The smell of tomato sauce was very strong. In the hallway, there are several bodies decorating the place. He is able to do this quickly and silently. Too strong for the shirtless man, who is terrified. From afar, they hear someone saying that he is a traitor. The blonde says the goddess taught him how to use force and now he uses it against them. But he hated them so much and couldn't wait for the chance to do this. Threatening her, he placed a capsule in her mouth. She swallowed it immediately, and tomato juice began to spill from her mouth. The shirtless man saw it all, terrified, as he couldn't believe the blonde had been finished off so easily. They quickly hid, afraid of what might happen next. Wei's spiritual power is terrifying, and the shirtless man knows he must get out of there as soon as possible. He ordered his henchmen to stay completely silent, but Wei told them to come out because he had already seen them. He said this with a sinister smile on his face. The shirtless man approached him, terrified, thinking not to anger him so he could get out of there alive. He said he didn't expect to see him there and that it was a big coincidence. Hearing this, Wei imagined what happened. Surely he had seen him use the lending technique and came there to finish him off. If that's the case, he should go ahead and try right now. Throwing the cloth he had used to clean his hands onto the ground, Wei said he was ready. Already on his knees, the shirtless man said he had come there to speak with Chiron. They would never try something like that with him. But the thug knew the mission was to eliminate anyone who tried to stop them. Wen wanted to know where his master was, as she should have come with him. Making excuses, he said she had sent them ahead. Using an ability, Wei knew that was a lie. If he kept lying like that, Wei would have to finish him too. The shirtless man had no idea how he was discovered and said the chief just didn't want to come. She was facing a barrier to transcend her realm, needing to stay in hot springs to avoid losing control of her progress. And that's what she had been doing all this time. That's why, even with all of this, she hadn't come, he thought. He quickly asked for the chief's location. This was great for the shirtless man, as the chief would take care of him. He said there was an enchantment around their school that prevents intruders, and he asked his companion for his jade medallion. The jade piece would allow him to enter and guide him once he was there. In exchange for their cooperation, Wei allowed them to leave the place. They left in a hurry, grateful to be alive. As soon as they were gone, the blonde stood up as if nothing had happened. She said his acting was excellent, just as expected from her man, and that Xingqian must be terrified of him. Now it was only a matter of time before he dealt with those people, and the blonde wanted to know if he was really going to meet the chief. After all, she's nearly immortal and he wouldn't stand a chance against her, knowing that his plan is to somehow include her in his harem. Outside the hotel, he arrives. As soon as he enters the room, the brunette asks if he's heard about what Wei's been up to. The market fluctuated a lot and the city's 4 largest companies lost a lot of money. But it was their fault for being monopolists, and now they're only getting what they deserve. But he wants to know if the Shen family's assets have shrunk. Yes, they had already fallen once before, but now it was catastrophic. Only the Chumo group keeps growing and everyone wants to know who's behind this company. If that's true, congratulations to that person. Shenmo realizes that the name Chumo is a combination of hers and Lin Chu's names. What a coincidence, she thinks, but she doesn't believe it's a coincidence. Now Lin Chu is intrigued by her statement, but she's had time to investigate everything thoroughly. And now she knows that he's the one behind this massive company. She's already in an attack stance. Even so, he tries to dodge by saying the company isn't his, as he doesn't want to split the assets of his partner. At the moment, he struggles to resist the relentless attack. However, the lovely woman is determined to uncover the truth and get her share of the scheme. She says the company's initial funds were from the card she gave him. Even the Chumo hotel manager treats him too well, and that's a bit suspicious too. Faced with these facts, she's already upset that he won't confess that he owns the company. After that pressure and hearing superficial facts that would hardly prove anything in another situation, he decides to confess. Besides being the owner of this company, he is literally a billionaire. This left the lovely woman very upset, as he had lied to her once again. However, this particular lie shouldn't be a reason to cry. Even though they know his Huijin pill has been restored, he keeps lying. And now she thinks that others must already know the truth, and she believes she was the last to find out. Now it's his turn to use his charm to justify himself and keep lying in the future, confidently. But the lovely woman says there's nothing left to explain, that he doesn't treat her like a wife, and that's the real problem. Because the last time he asked her if she saw him as a husband, she thought deeply about the subject. She had changed a lot from who she once was, and there were things she did only for him and no one else. And to protect him, she picked a fight with the family she grew up with and formed bonds with, yet he doesn't seem to see the sacrifice she made. Her comment hit hard. With charm, he says things aren't how she thinks. Trying to make up for the string of lies, he tells her he has a surprise for her. After all, her mood hasn't been great these past few days. He knows she's been thinking about the losses the Shen family has been accumulating. He knows that despite everything that has happened, she can't let go of her family. And the Chumo group was created as an alternative so the family wouldn't go bankrupt. He just didn't want to explain this to her before. He did it to put an end to her worries because, after all, everything he does is to make his wife happy. After hearing this story, she seems to have believed him completely. Seeing her cry, he was surprised, but the lovely woman said she should never have doubted him for a moment. He really is so kind to her, letting her clothes fall strategically. She says she's very moved by everything she heard. After being married for so long, it's time for her to do something nice for him. It's time to wake up the whole building and make the people jealous. After disturbing the neighbors with a session of inexpressible and untranslatable sounds, they're still awake. The lovely woman realized she was in trouble because the guy was more awake than a child who ate a pound of sugar. Energetic as a bird, he's still wide awake. He said he wasn't even a bit sleepy. Now he's truly exhausted and drained, as a married man should be after fulfilling his marital duties. He's so worn out that his eyes can barely open fully. In fact, the lovely woman noticed he had to use the help of his spiritual power. But he just wanted to see if energy transmission was better in that specific situation. It had nothing to do with his lack of virility. And indeed, she transcended her realm during the session to wake up the building and make the people jealous. It's no surprise that this used to be common. Transmitting energy this way is quite efficient. And now the two of them have gained a lot and more than her. If he does this with more women, his father will be furious. But soon his conscience weighed on him because he couldn't do that to Shenmo. These seemingly stupid ideas are a reflection of memories that aren't his, and sometimes he feels like he's not himself. Now he thinks this is Eva's doing, as reminding him of the past has caused these new thoughts to surface. Shenmo is now at her family's headquarters. The girl is very well dressed. A background character says she's very bold to come here after everything that happened. She says the situation is serious and she doesn't have time to deal with clowns. The problem was the large investment they made in Longyuan, but there's no research on how to use spiritual energy as a traditional energy source. And the man said other companies have tried that and none have succeeded. However, she knows someone capable of doing it, but he needs to have control over the Longyuan company. Faced with this, she's confident her proposal will be accepted. But all it generated was surprise. The young man tells his father that this must be a lie and that she's trying to deceive them somehow. The old man wants to know who this person is and why he should trust him. He's none other than the head of the Chumo group, who uses spiritual energy and telephony devices, and they can talk to him right now. And she placed a phone on the table. But the young man thinks it's nonsense and says that if he can use spiritual energy on the phone, he'll juggle a ball with his head. It didn't take long for the device to glow with spiritual energy. Astonished by this, the old man landed a slap on the boy's face. At the Chuma Hotel, Wai is quite relaxed. Now he wants the boy's head to play a little soccer, just as the kid promised. Now they are at the Longyuan Group's laboratory. The company is under her supervision now, and when they shot at her, her father had been clear that it was just to scare her, not to harm her. Even after everything, she came back to help, and that moved him deeply. Since the family raised her, she doesn't want to see them go bankrupt. If she wants, she could bring Lin Chu, as the old man doesn't want to do anything bad to him. Now she says it's a good thing he won't do anything to him, otherwise she would forget all the good deeds she plans to do. And about that, she's very resolute. The old man promised he wouldn't do anything, as the scare he received was brutal. She leaves their presence. The kid thinks it's an affront and that she should value the family more instead of siding with a stranger. But the old man is already furious about another situation. Because if the kid weren't so incompetent, things would be different. Shenmo worked hard to get where she is, and he should learn more from her. Now that she's in charge of the company, she wants to know when he's going to the lab. He's not going there anytime soon, knowing that the Shen family will be watching too closely, and he's not too keen on making things easier for them. His strategy is to create a secret lab there, with an amusement park on top as a distraction, and he plans to use the Shen family's money for it. The secret entrance will be a haunted house that will scare off any troublemakers. This really pleased Shenmo. While they were talking, a woman arrived with good news. Lin Chu's plan had worked very, very well. Jingxi's stocks dropped once again. Shenmo wants to know what plan this is and why she doesn't know about it. Now it's time for the man to explain himself, once again. He wanted to position this company as an enemy of the people. It seems he has a good relationship with this other woman who knows things that his wife doesn't. Sensing the tension, the pink-haired woman said she would leave. But Lin Chu didn't want her to go just yet. Craftily, he approached both of them. Because they stand the CEOs of two strategic companies and both are important to him. His enemy is the Jing family, not each other. Faced with this, the pink-haired woman blushed. Now Shenmo wanted to ask a simple question. Yahello had been her personal maid forever, and since they are married, she is now his too. She wants to know if the guy likes the maid. If he does, she will let things stay as they are. Yahello didn't expect this and didn't know what to say. Faced with this, he says that yes, he does like her. But Shenmo said she was just testing him and didn't expect that answer. The professional charmer said that the way he likes her is the way he likes to like. And there will be many interests in this life, he doesn't deny that. But the one he likes the most is her. Hearing this, the pink-haired woman realizes that what she feels for the charmer is love. In the room, there are many documents scattered on the floor. The employee says that the people who work there have left. If the stock price drops again, they'll be walking hand in hand with bankruptcy. The boss asked if he had spoken with the other group of companies, and as a response, they would send someone to talk to him. Now he'll wait for that. The poor employee leaves the room, but the boss looks at him thoughtful. That why really cause a widespread mess in the city? The boss wants to know if that other person will just sit back and do nothing. From the shadows, a voice says that people all over the world are interested in spiritual energy, and she came immediately after handling things in another city. There's something she needs to confirm with him. Then the shadow took the glass from the boss's hand. She wants to know if he really plans to retire, because if that's the case, he should give her the Jin group. But as long as she finds his son and sends Wei to the afterlife, she'll leave Longqing. This is great because the shadow loves taking people out. Outside, life continues as normal. He thinks the boss wants him to do it soon, but his boss will understand that he's busy. The mysterious shadow is with him because she knows he's been in Wei's presence. Just follow him consistently and he'll find his target. Wei has the jade medallion he obtained and wants to know if the girl knows how to use that artifact. Just rub the symbol with your finger and you'll be taken to the gate. With that medallion, he will be taken directly to the center. Wei wants to know if she knows the master, but the girl says she knew the previous leader, who is no longer alive. He wants to know if he could beat her if he had help. The girl says he must be dreaming. His level is still too low, and if he fought her, he wouldn't last 3 seconds. But if he's available, they could train that night without any problem. Wei thanks her but says that he's already married. However, she only wants to help him cultivate, and marriage shouldn't interfere with that. The employee arrive and ask what his boss wanted him to do. His first test is to find all the psychic phones. Faced with this, the employee didn't understand a thing. But what he says is to test his spiritual aptitude, and with that, he'll define a new task. The shadow begins to emerge from the ground. The girl noticed this and was already prepared to act. Quickly, she used her dagger to slice up the emerging shadow. The pieces of the shadow gathered on the ground, and then spread out immediately after. It didn't expect to find someone strong there, and that was exciting. But she knows where the body is even if the shadow hides. It doesn't take long before she strikes again. Her sword strikes the shadow with force. A hand emerges from the shadows, praising the girl for being the first to realize there was a body there. It's just a pity that her blade was too slow. Wei wants to know who sent that short kid to him. The boy takes offense and says he's not that short, but that's irrelevant now as they won't live past today. The shadowy boy is fully engaged in his task. Looking at him, Wei analyzes the situation. The girl doesn't understand as something seems off. Not even the employee grasps the gravity of the situation. The shadow launches an attack toward them. It misses Wei, but hits his employee squarely. The short one doesn't care about what they say. Wei is frustrated and wants to know who he is and why he's attacking them. And he sends a bit of his power in the boy's direction. But Wei's actions would bring him danger and shouldn't be surprised by that. He's merely specialist in silencing loudmouths like Wei from the SONWU group. With that, he launched a few more attacks that didn't hit anyone. Wei says that group is just a bunch of useless turtles. The boy says they are a beast and a snake too. Malvi says that no one called that little boy to come there. There's been too much talk and the boy wants to finish his job. The girl asked Lin Chu to be cautious, but her distraction got her trapped. She should never let the shadow touch her under any circumstances. Seeing that she's trapped, he ordered the boy to free her. But he should worry about himself, not her. Wei notices that his friend is attacking him with her sword. Not touching the shadow and dealing with her now is going to be too much work. He'll need to get closer to fight more effectively. However, the boy says that won't work. Unless he wants to hurt the girl, then that's another story. But Wei doesn't want to fight and asks what the boy wants. First, he wants Wei to take off his mask. Since the request is simple, he agreed. But hidden on his back is a sneaky jade medallion. Then he began to prepare to remove the mask. The child is already anxious to see who this mysterious person is. Before anything could happen, energy descended from the skies. Far away, the leader of another sect is meditating. It seems someone is using the jade medallion. It didn't take long for dust to rise from the ground and someone was summoned there. The boy was the one who arrived suddenly. Another person descends from the heavens, but she doesn't reach the ground. Wei falls into the arms of the leader. Now she wants to know who he is, and Wei says he's the man she's been thinking about lately. Upon hearing that, she quickly pushed him out of her lap, because she found the statement far too presumptuous. Hearing some footsteps nearby, she thinks of something. She says she received the medallion from one of her disciples and needs her help to deal with a dwarf. The dwarf got irritated at being called a dwarf, but he had orders to take Wei, and she wasn't supposed to interfere. Seeing that she had nothing to do with it, she decided not to get involved. To the dwarf, her inaction only helps him. His shadows approach with malicious intent. The creamy leader stands in front of Wei. The shadows are prevented from reaching both of them because of her. The dwarf didn't like this and told Wei to face him if he could. Wei says he can handle it, as long as the dwarf can reach him. Now the chief looks at Wei with disapproval after hearing that. Manipulating energy with one of her hands, she makes the boy levitate. Faced with this, the dwarf believes his situation just became less complicated. He thought Wei was stronger, but now he realizes he was wrong. He assumed Wei was at a higher level, and now he's disappointed. Curious about Wei's identity, he removes the mask, prompting Wei to act to avoid being discovered. Without the mask, the dwarf recognizes who he is. Lin Chu is a well-known failure, and with the Huygen pills, the SONWU family will be able to profit greatly. The chief overhears their conversation. The dwarf addresses her and bids her farewell. However, it seems she has other plans and is ready to fight. She hits him with a kick to the face. The impact sends him sprawling to the ground. The dwarf believes she wouldn't interfere. She says she didn't use her hands, only her feet. But this led him to threaten her, saying she would become an enemy of the SONWU group. She replies that if the dwarf wants, he can leave, but Wei stays. Now the dwarf wants to know if disagreeing means he'll have to fight her. but the chief says she will unlive him. This was unexpected, and he can't understand why she changed her mind so quickly. The doubt that lingers in her mind is whether Lin Chu is the man she had been thinking of. Now the dwarf is worried about the situation. Frustrated by the chief's sudden intervention, he becomes irritated as well. She reiterates that he's too presumptuous. With one hand, she begins to manipulate energy for a destructive attack. In that place, she has control over everything. Her spiritual energy surrounds her completely. The dwarf tries to defend himself as best he can. Behind them, she manipulates the shape of the water. Watching all this, Wei is impressed by her abilities. Even lightning is forming in the sky. The dwarf knows he's in serious trouble now, and the attack comes from the sky, aimed at him. Struck, the dwarf falls to the ground, powerless. Not far away, the shirtless man hears the sounds of the battle and calls his companions to come to their master's aid. Wei notices that more people are heading their way. Faced with this, he asks the woman for help to preserve his identity, but she has no reason to help him keep his secret. Wei says he knows she's looking for the Huygen pill to level up, and that he could help her with that. If he's not helped, he has no reason to help her either. The disciples arrive and ask if everything is all right with her master. She reassures them, saying there's no need for concern, but she orders them to capture the dwarf and imprison him. Small bubbles of air start to rise from the water. Wei is submerged with no spiritual energy left from the battle and barely enough breath to stay hidden. The shirtless man wonders how an intruder got there, as the jade medallion is required for access. She doesn't know how it happened, but the shirtless man could investigate if he wanted. Meanwhile, Wei is on the verge of losing consciousness. The bubbles rise more rapidly. Seeing this, the shirtless man is intrigued, thinking there might be someone down below. The master says she's tired and that they should leave quickly before the shirtless man could say anything about the bubbles. Wei had finally reached his limit and could no longer stay underwater. Just as he was about to give in, the master noticed movement in the water. Wei emerges, gasping for air, but the shirtless man was still there and asked what that sound was. The master, almost out of her clothes, said there was no sound at all and that he should leave immediately. Finally, he apologized and decided to leave. On the other side, Wei is amazed by the abundance in front of him. Now this is what he calls her master. Once the shirtless man is gone, Wei tells her she can put her clothes back on, and so she does, covering herself once again. Wei apologizes for subjecting her to that just to keep hiding him, but she says she has long abandoned her passions and no longer cares about worldly morals, so he shouldn't feel embarrassed. However, Wei says that if she cultivates the Hanzong technique, it doesn't make sense that she has given up on those passions. But after coming this far, those things no longer matter. All she desires now is to become immortal. With the many memories he holds, Wei tells her that she's mistaken. He confides in her that he carries the memories of a monk who lived long ago. It was just like her, but one day he returned to his passions and managed to transcend to the catastrophic realm. So he asked her who had recommended that she distance herself from her passions. That person was none other than her master. Wei wants to know if he succeeded on that path. The chief was there when he tried, but her master did not succeed in that. His body was overtaken by a great energy. He emitted it in every way, his body glowing like a star. His body was struck by numerous lightning bolts without turning to ashes. Now Wei wants to know if she still believes in that advice even after seeing that. Until now, she had thought he just hadn't cultivated enough and was intrigued if the result was due to a flawed practice. When asked who the monk in his memories was, Wei says his name is Lai Yin. Upon hearing that name, she was truly shocked. Now she is convinced that what Wei said makes sense, and she too will reconsider her passions and desires. That monk was the one who founded their sect 3,000 years ago, and many believe he was just a legend. Wei can hardly believe he carries the memories of such an ancient life. Faced with this, the chief wants to know how his cultivation is so low if he has so many memories. In response, he says he hasn't been able to practice. Only recently did he regain his ability to cultivate, and many of his memories are of people who were half immortal from birth. Their techniques confuse him, and she understood that. His proposal was for her to teach him how to cultivate, and in return he would satisfy her desires. But she hasn't felt the 7 primary emotions in a long time and doubts he could help her with that. Even so, Wei is confident that he can make her happy easily. She's still not convinced. He tells her to take off her clothes and sit in the water, to send her energy to him and then collect it again. She begins doing so, keeping her clothes on. Thinking that he's going to use the pill, she says that even that won't make her happy. Already in the water, she starts following his instructions. Feeling her spiritual energy, he realized it was invigorating. Finally, the chief has a smile on her face. That type of energy made her feel really good. Wei looks at her and realizes it worked. She had smiled and he asked if she knows what happiness is. If that's happiness, she says, it's not much different from the peace she feels when she's calm. That's just the beginning, he says. He will still make her discover how things really work. He plans to make her feel in order happiness, anger, sadness, fear, love, and desire. The chief submerged herself in the water once again. Now dressed, she wants to know what he's going to do next. She asks if she should feel offended in this situation, but he's going to let the emotions emerge slowly since she's not familiar with them. Now it's time for her to fulfill her part in teaching how to cultivate. The chief looks at him with a bit of disdain. In another place, they're in the secret pavilion. the key to divine secret cultivation into his secret world. He has to enter the most hidden place in his heart. Using the technique she's going to teach to channel his spiritual energy. This new technique is demanding a lot from him. Since this is his first time, all he needs to do is follow her energy. She's waiting for his energy to enter. Finally, it did, and this dialogue seems very familiar to him. The chief opened her secret world. Wei realizes he's in another place, an open field. In fact, it looks a lot like a prairie. She says that at first it didn't look like that, but she changed this world with a lot of practice. Desperate to abandon her desires, she made it purer and purer. His immediate curiosity is whether she likes green that much. And seeing that there was only one tree, he asked why there was only a single fruit. However, in the past, not even the tree or the fruit were there. It certainly appeared because of him. That statement left him surprised. The fruit must represent the emotion she had felt. If he continues to make her feel emotions, he assumes the tree will soon be full. Wei is excited, and together he hopes the tree will be filled with ripe fruits. The chief now wants to see his secret world to know what he thinks about daily. To do so, she grabbed his arm with one of her hands. She began to concentrate so they could enter his world. As soon as she succeeded, they both disappeared from that prairie. In his secret world, there are several buildings. The chief is impressed by what she sees. In that place, there are also many people. She wants to know why there are so many people there, and Wei says he is familiar with them and consults them frequently. This is curious as she's never seen a secret world with so many people, and she wants to know how he did that. Then Wei states that there are nearly 2,500 souls of the 10,000 there, and he asks if she believes it. That's why his soul feels different, because he has this ability. Among the souls, someone notices that Lin Chu is there. A commotion starts as everyone wants to see Lin Chu. Now he's worried about the crowd suddenly wanting to see him. They are all excited to approach him. Before anything can happen, the chief pulls in with one of her hands. Wei doesn't understand the reason for the commotion, but she asks them to leave her secret world. But the souls say they don't mean any harm, only that he is necessary to fulfill a wish of theirs. Wei wants to know what that wish is. One says it's to find the best of all. Another wants to find the one who unlived him. And all of them want to fulfill their own wishes from when they were alive. In the middle of them is the monk who founded the chief's sect. Wei isn't a god and can't grant so many wishes like that. Since he's their host, he's their only hope now. She has no idea how all of them are in his soul, but there are certainly fragments of all those souls. The souls want him to come down and return to them soon. With so many fragments present, Wei needs to get rid of them if he wants to continue advancing. But Wei doesn't know how to eliminate distractions in that world. It's very simple, she says. He just needs to finish them off and allow them to finally rest. The monk, seeing the incoming attack, became distressed. A great explosion shook the place. Unlike the others, he says that for the souls that won't bring relief, a different spiritual energy begins to fill Wei's body. He had absorbed one of their spiritual energies. Doing this also increases his own energy. Absorbing all those fragments could help him. Faced with this, the souls revolt, imagining that not only will they not be helped, but they will be unlived again. She tells him not to worry, and his soul fragments represent almost nothing of the entire soul. Wei now has a sword in his hands. With it, he begins his advance toward the souls. Another massive explosion occurs. Lin Chu is on the ground, having absorbed more soul fragments. With that, he felt his spiritual energy increase significantly. It doesn't take long for him to be surrounded by the remaining fragments. One of them is immobilizing him. A sword he falls to the ground. From above, the chief observes what's happening. She commands the fragment to stop attacking the host. Lin Chu was on the verge of losing consciousness from the strangulation. A weapon begins to materialize in the secret world. She asks if she hasn't been heard, because she already gave an order to release him, and the order is to let him go immediately. Finally, after her attack, Lin Chu is free. The chief had intervened decisively. Looking at her, Wei doesn't understand why she became so furious. She tells him to hide behind her, as he's not yet capable of dealing with those fragments. In front of her, the fragments realize they're in a dire situation. In one of her hands, another weapon begins to materialize. It's not in her interest for Wei to get hurt, so she's going to do him the favor of finishing them all off. Sweating profusely, Wei can't understand when she started caring so much about him. Her attack begins, and there's not much that can be done to stop it. But her real desire is to use that anger to grow even stronger. It doesn't take long for Wei to realize that perhaps she doesn't care about him at all. Maybe she's just using the opportunity to feel anger again to reconnect with her emotions. All he needs to do in this situation is follow her and absorb the energy from the fragments. The debris begins to lift off the ground, and their energy begins to flow toward Lin Chu. Meanwhile, the chief is fully engaged in her mission. There are still many fragments to be fragmented by her power. It had been so long since she had felt anger that she had forgotten how enjoyable it could be. Seeing her angry is quite different from the image he had of the emotionless chief. There's so much power flowing from her now. After this, Wei had enough spiritual energy to continue as he had reached the nascent soul realm. But this is only the beginning, and they must ascend to the Yuan-Yin realm. With her sword in hand, the chief prepares another massive attack. Lightning bolts descend from the sky of the secret world. The energy from the fragments is condensing even more. It's time for him to absorb all that energy. This is his first step toward the path of becoming stronger. Wei is completely focused on this. His eyes glow, filled with power. Outside the goddess's temple, the day is sunny. She rests in her bed. While sleeping, she sensed the energy of the Soul King. Finally, her beloved had awakened. With that, she could now plan her next move. With one hand, she's holding a small statue. Now it's up to that turtle to help the king fully awaken with combat experience. No matter how many female companions he may have, even if they are many and extremely desirable, because he is still not hers, not yet. When he fully awakens, monogamy will be invoked with force. Continuing with the practice, Wei managed to let his consciousness drift outside his body. His curiosity now is how much time he spent in this secret world. Since they began, a week had already passed. A week sitting without eating or drinking. Unbelievable. But in this secret pavilion, there's infrastructure to sustain life without issues. As soon as she finished saying this, Lin Chu's consciousness returned. He began to rise slowly. As soon as he stood up, he lost his balance and fell. At first, he felt like he had fallen on something soft and comfortable. He soon realized he had fallen on the chief, who was now also his teacher. Regaining his composure, he asked her to return to Dragon City with him, but she had no motivation to do so. In that time, he had made her feel 2 emotions, and if she goes with him, he will help her with the process. Hearing that, she agreed to accompany him. The next emotion would be sadness, and it would be a challenge to make someone almost immortal feel it. At the hotel, he announces his arrival. His wife had missed him, as it had been a week since she heard anything from him, but Lin Chu says it all happened very suddenly. The chief recognizes Shen Mo and realizes that they must have a good relationship, contrary to what rumors suggest. As the 2 women look at each other, Shen Mo wants to know who the stranger is. He introduced her as a master of a sect, making Shen Mo think that to him she's just another teacher. At the palace, a messenger performs his duties. The emperor wants to know why Xuanning hasn't returned yet. This is Emperor Xuanwu surrounded by servants. A woman approaches, saying there's no news yet. If he hasn't been captured yet, it's likely that he's no longer among the living. However, the emperor doesn't believe there's anyone powerful in Dragon City. To her, it's possible that Xuanning was defeated by Wei. She speaks with authority because she possesses abundant moral and ethical qualities. If that's the case, it would be wonderful. Faced with this, the emperor would like to know if she's interested in going. Even with her skills, it might be a difficult task, but she makes it clear that the dwarf is nothing compared to her, because unlike him, she knows how to use her head to devise strategies. At the headquarters of the Jingxi group, the boss is still meeting with people. Mystic is standing in front of him now. He wants to know how she managed to enter so easily. As long as she disguises herself as a servant, no one can stop her from entering. Now that she's there, she wants to know where Wei is. The boss is furious that his son is still missing and his company is failing. But she has a way to help him find his son. Those words made him extremely enthusiastic. However, he would need to sacrifice a bit of his pride. In the suite, Lin Chu is catching up on affection with his wife. Since he hadn't seen her in a week, there was much to be updated between them. In the middle of their embrace, the pink-haired woman appears to deliver some news. She has a message for Lin Chu that demands his attention. Now they are in Jingyin's room. On her tablet, she shows him a recording. It's the boss saying that he's bankrupt and that he declares his defeat to Wei. But there is still something he is interested in. He begs for his son to be returned, because he is still so young. And before the message ends, the pink-haired girl pauses the video of his declaration. She wants to know if they're going to return the son to his father now. Since he no longer holds any value for them, it doesn't make sense to keep him imprisoned in the hotel. But he knows Wei's identity, and that could cause problems. Even if he knows that Lin Chu has a way to deal with his memory now. Using his abilities, he begins to hypnotize the young man. After absorbing the fragments, his memories have become clearer, giving him greater proficiency in his techniques. During the hypnosis, he counts down to induce the young man into the trance. The command is that once he wakes up, he will forget everything about Wei's identity. The young man's eyes become hollow and his mind embraces the command. He falls into a deep sleep after the process. Elsewhere, the boss asks if the young man is awake. After a long time, he's reunited with his father and asks if it's really him. They embrace, emotional at the reunion. While they are hugging, the girl uses a technique on him to access his mind. Now she also knows that Wei's true identity is Lin Chu. The young man says he couldn't stand being in prison any longer and can't wait to eat the things he used to. Mystic interrupts, asking if they talked enough. The boss thanks the emperor for reuniting father and son. Having the boy with him, he asks if the boy knows Wei's identity. Hearing the name, the young man feels familiarity but cannot associate it with anything. The girl says they don't need to think about that and that they should leave the city as soon as possible. To prevent any leaks of information, it's best that they don't see her again. Frightened, they both agree with her. At the hotel that night, she is already properly infiltrated. At the moment, she's looking for Lin Chu, the true identity of Wei. Using an ability, she quickly locates him. Beside him is the chief, who is almost immortal, and even the emperor would have difficulty dealing with her. Why she's there is something to think about carefully. The whole situation is very strange, because even though he's married, he's always surrounded by women. The obvious conclusion for her is that Lin Chu is a pitbull of the year, and that makes her intrigued as she loves an untamed dog. Since the chief is there, she can't use force. She has to use her wits. Now that he has absorbed the fragments, he is much more talented and can already practice in the secret world. Lin Shu tells her the same, that she's progressing quickly. The compliment makes her happy, and she's becoming more and more human. Seeing this, Mystic wants to know the nature of their relationship, as she knows the chief is usually aloof. From the monk's memories, she knows the chief must regain her emotions little by little, and with desire, she must find the right person for dual cultivation. Only after finding that person and causing some chaos will she be able to become immortal. The chief wants to know if it has to be in that order, and yes, it has to be that way, or the person will be struck by several lightning bolts. However, it would have been nice if someone had told her this beforehand. Mystic overheard everything and is already thinking about sabotaging things a little. In her hand, she dripped a few drops of something diabolical. She blew it and a seductive energy emanated from it. Both of them were affected by that potion. Since Y has many memories in his head, he noticed the scent in the air. The chief is already immersed in that wonderful fragrance. It's certainly not poison. Otherwise, they would have identified it and defended themselves. It's strange, and the chief is starting to find him much more attractive than before. She looks at him with growing interest. It doesn't take long for her to realize what might happen. She forcefully pushes him away and orders him to leave immediately. That's an aphrodisiac. Someone wants her to jump the gun. In theory, this perfume only works on people one already desires. In other words, it doesn't work on everyone. This can only mean one thing among the possibilities. The chief was already attracted to Lin Shu. Confronted with this realization, she begins to sweat before responding. She orders him to shut up and leave immediately. As she pushed him, Lin Shu hit the wall of the room. It seems the enemy knows them well, and right now, Lin Shu needs to find a place to hide. He leaves the room while Mystic watches him. But that wasn't her only trick. As he turns the doorknob to exit, he encounters something else. Rosenha is there wearing very revealing clothes. Something feels strange, and he seems quite confused. Approaching her quickly, he covers her mouth. He asks her to stay quiet because someone is attacking them. With their close proximity, she smells the perfume and begins to feel its effects. They sit in the room, and Lin Shu still doesn't know what happened. Rosenha hands him a remote, but he has no idea what it's for. It controls a bomb hidden in a box, which could be discreetly given to the invader. Hearing this, he praises her for being so smart. Rosenha is becoming increasingly immersed in the effects of the perfume. But the person attacking them heard everything. A bright light begins to shine from the door. Lin Shu prepares for whatever may come. Mystic finally reveals herself to them. Lin Shu is intrigued by the origin of this woman, because she managed to find this place so easily. While everything is happening, Rosenha pays no attention, distracted by the fact that Lin Shu touched her. On a nearby chair, the blonde prepares to explain everything. It took a lot of effort for her to find him, and after everything that happened, she's only there to ask a few questions. She runs her foot up the boy's leg. Now she asks if Rosenha belongs to the Exoenwa group. But the truth is, the city has always been under their influence, and she wants to know who Lin Shu really is. Because, aside from his talent for cultivation, he became very wealthy, and she imagines there must be someone behind all this progress. And indeed, there's a master supporting him, someone Mystic couldn't handle. But that master is unable to help right now, as she would end up succumbing to her own desires. Not wanting to stay there, Lin Shu grabs Rosenha and tries to leave the room. Before they can leave, the blonde begins to transform. Once transformed, there would be no way to defeat her, and she insists he give her the information she seeks. But Lin Shu has no guarantee he'll survive if he complies. Beside him, Rosenha is barely able to contain herself anymore. The blonde says he shouldn't worry as she doesn't want to hurt him. In fact, he should hurry because other women in his life might show up, and that could ruin his social life. But Lin Shu has no idea what she's talking about. Rosenha, who is now completely overwhelmed by the effects of the perfume, apologizes to him, and without warning, she kisses him, something he had no idea she wanted to do. She continues kissing him without hesitation. Given her moral and ethical qualities, he's completely defenseless. But he realizes the situation is peculiar. He pushes her away and tells her this is all due to the perfume. But the blonde says it only affects people who already have feelings. With that, she continues to watch them with great interest. Lin Shu is convinced that Rosenha hated him and wants to know when she started liking him. Even if she doesn't know, but ever since she found out he was Wei, she stopped hating him. And seeing his relationship with his wife, she became even happier with him. She even felt jealous of the relationship, which only got better. Because of this, she began suppressing those feelings even more. Now Lin Shu is shocked by what he just heard. The blonde, however, is pleased now that everyone is being honest. Getting closer to him with her ethics and morals, she says a few more things. She's certain that he liked Rosenha too, not too long ago. It's no coincidence that he went to her room first and not someone else's, because subconsciously he knows Rosenha is the most trustworthy person. She doesn't want to hear excuses, as she knows she's right. And in fact, the subconscious reveals desires without filters. Given how they met, it's possible that this is true and that he considers her reliable. She's the person he's faced the most difficult situations with and the one he trusts the most. Once again, Rosenha approaches him with her quantum mechanics expertise. The perfume's effect is getting stronger. For him, it was a huge mistake to allow himself to be affected by it. Now his thoughts are conflicted because he's already married. In front of him, the blonde continues to apply pressure. If he doesn't reveal his secret soon, she'll leave the two of them alone in the room. And if his wife and the chief find him in that state, it would be disastrous. Nearly succumbing to Rosanha's Epicurean philosophy knowledge, he decides to tell them everything. It all started at the wedding when a woman gave him fragments of 10,000 souls. She also told him that he was her former love. 10,000 is an enormous number, and the blonde could hardly believe it. Only when a strange organization contacted her did she realize that the woman was the goddess they venerated. The blonde didn't believe he was the love of the goddess Eva. Knowing this, she felt she needed to return immediately with that information. Having heard what she wanted, the blonde left the room, leaving Lin Shu alone with Rosanha. Faced with everything that had happened, Rosanha said she was tired and invited him to sleep by her side. She eagerly awaited his response. This put Lin Shu in a complicated situation, as given Rosanha's ethical principles, the options seemed few. There was a moral dilemma where seemingly the wrong answer might be better than the right one. Faced with this, he debated whether or not he should accept the invitation. Rosanha seemed impatient with his hesitation. Displaying her credentials and postgraduate degrees, she insisted that he also liked her and that it shouldn't be a problem. Indeed, Lin Shu liked Rosanha, but he was reluctant to act while still under the influence of the perfume. Realizing that if he stayed any longer, he would eventually succumb to its effects, he left the room. Rosanha was disappointed because she had wanted to spend the night with him. Outside, the rain poured down, perfect for Lin Shu to cool his head and reflect on everything that had happened. He began to wonder if, after all that had transpired, he was a despicable person. While he lamented, the blonde was already passing along the information she had gathered. She needed people capable of dealing with a chief who was nearly immortal. She hung up the phone after receiving confirmation that Xuan Ming would meet her. Watching from afar, the blonde noticed both Lin Shu and Rosanha out in the rain together, almost like a romantic scene. Rosanha stood in front of Lin Shu. She approached and hugged him. She said he shouldn't have left like that, knowing that he liked her too. Lin Shu admitted that he indeed liked her qualities, intelligence, sweetness, and character. But under the influence of the perfume, it would have been unfair to her if something had happened. Now that the perfume's effect had worn off, Rosanha had decided to confess her feelings. Not knowing how to express it, she simply told him she liked him. Silence hung between them. After her confession, she wiped the tears from her face. Without the influence of the perfume, she asked him to listen carefully, as she wanted to give everything she had to the person she loved, as long as he accepted her. Once again, she hugged him in the rain. Listening to his heartbeat, she said that even his heart revealed that he liked her. For her, Lin Shu belonged to his wife, but Wei was hers, and that made things balance. While this was happening, the blonde decided to release more of the joyed perfume into the air. As soon as the fragrance reached them, Rosanha fainted. The blonde, now smiling, revealed that Rosanha was poisoned and could only be cured with spiritual energy. To save her, Lin Shu would have to spend the entire night transferring spiritual energy to her. And in fact, all Rosanha wanted was just one night and nothing more. Given the situation, Lin Shu picked her up in his arms. They returned to the room, ready to make the neighbors jealous. Rosanha mentioned that she had never played this kind of game before, as it was her first time. Rosanha was already lying on Lin Shu like a pet cat, but she needed a hot bath since they had been in the rain, and it would help prevent her from getting sick. In the bath, the water began to fill. Outside, Wei prepared to join her. She was anxious, waiting for him to enter. Carefully, he stepped into the bath. Once inside, they were still fully clothed, as they were both virtuous people. Rosanha looked at him with more mischief than a con artist in a retirement home. It didn't take long for them to start kissing passionately. His hands, still restrained, wrapped around her back. After the kiss, he lifted her onto his shoulders. Rosanha didn't fully understand what was happening, but was enjoying the experience. With one hand, he held her firmly. The water rose, covering them completely. Rosanha found herself immersed in the water, feeling comforted, as if she were the only person in an endless ocean. He was sharing his spiritual energy with her, which is why it felt so good. There they held hands. The connection between them was so strong that Rosanha felt she might transcend to another level just from that. While she concentrated, her attributes became even more prominent. Wei told her that she could become stronger than she imagined as long as she could withstand the pressure. For today, his name was Shituba. During the process, Rosanha's entire body began to glow. Wei had to shield his face due to the intense light. Indeed, Rosanha was even more talented than she had imagined. The blonde, observing from afar, was intrigued, thinking that if this was truly the former love of the goddess Eva. So she couldn't finish him off, but if she knew how to use him, she could take down Xuanwu. If the emperor confronted the goddess, it would mean the end of the sect and all that nonsense. She had been in that group for a long time and couldn't wait to leave and live a normal life. As she thought about it, she noticed the air around her beginning to change. Ice was forming on the ceiling. It was accumulating to the point that it started falling to the floor. A boot stepped on the ice-covered ground. A hooded figure walked down the hallway. This guy who manipulates ice arrived too quickly. He now stood at the door to the room where the blonde was. Addressing her, he demanded to know where the chief was because he had come to deal with the situation. His goal was to deal with her and Wei as well. The emo guy wasn't going to give up on his mission. The blonde listened and didn't disagree. She knew Wei was having some quality time with Rosanha, so it was only a matter of time. All this young couple needed was some time alone. After all, she planned to use this person to free herself from Suanwoo. Rosina's power was growing more and more. She was a talented person. In just one night, her spiritual power had grown significantly. But, as with his wife, it was only when two people were together that Shuangxi revealed its potential. Her body shone as if made of metal, much to her surprise. There was no need to be frightened. Her soul was outside her body due to cultivation. Kissing her body, he told her he would guide her through this adventure. Meanwhile, no one noticed that a guy outside was turning everything to ice. The chief was quietly cultivating in her room. Opening her eyes, she sensed the invader's presence. Ice flew from the door as it was kicked open. The emo introduced himself, saying he was the person who would gift her a wooden suit, a coffin. He demanded to know if she had sworn in her grass. Seeing his hostility, she knew the emo was from the Exoenwu group. With a slight manipulation of energy in her hand, a spear appeared, and she remarked that this fashionable enemy was quite arrogant. The young man rushed toward her, ready to throw punches. He wanted her to hand over the dwarf who uses shadows as weapons. His attack hit something, creating a loud crash. The chief told him not to worry about anything anymore, because soon the two of them would be in the same place. Beams of energy shot forward. A huge impact occurred, but the emo managed to dodge. Looking at her, he considered his next move. In the room next door, the wife was wondering where her husband had been after disappearing for a week without explanation and then coming home with another woman. There was a lot of noise outside, so she decided to check it out. Other women also woke up to all the commotion. Wearing just her nightgown, she asked if anyone had seen her husband around. The three women quickly encountered the strange blonde. The blonde in turn was lost in thought. The wife wanted to know who she was and why she was standing in front of Xiaowi's room. Sensing an opportunity, the blonde knew she could use this woman to control Wei. So she said that, in fact, she was looking for Wei. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.